Good morning to everyone out there joining us. We are coming to you live from Nathan Benderson Park in beautiful Sarasota, Florida. We're here with you on NBC Sports, bringing you the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Team Trials rowing. And this is finals day. Mm-hmm. This is where we decide not only there are a few spots on the line for who is going to make this year's Olympic team pending USOPC, that's the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Committee's approval, but also some athletes that will decide if they're going to take the next step of having to actually qualify the individual event through another race later this summer in Lucerne, Switzerland, before they find out if they actually make the Olympic team. Mm-hmm. But here this morning, we're bringing you 2 Paralympic races and 8 Olympic caliber races, Olympic class races, starting at 8 o'clock and finishing right around 10:30 this morning. We're going to bring you athlete interviews. You'll get all the live footage of the racing. And I'm Lindsay Shoup, and I'm here with Grace Latz, and we are going to do our best to bring you the best information that we can so that you know exactly what is happening here on the race course this morning. Mm-hmm. Grace, what are you most excited about this morning? That's a hard question, I guess.
I know, right?
Throw you on the spot.
Right? Well, it's been interesting to just walk around the course and be, around the hotels and whatnot, and you see the athletes, and today was definitely a different vibe. I think everyone got, they felt the weight of today, and it felt a little bit, the pressure is on here, but like, to quote Billie Jean King, I mean, the pressure is a privilege.
Yeah.
So to be here, to be at finals day it's something special.
So this morning we're going to kick things off with 2 Paralympic races, followed by 8 Olympic class races. There are 14 different events at the Olympic Games in rowing. There are 5 Paralympic events. The United States has already qualified 8 for the Olympic Games, 2 so far for the Paralympic Games, and then today we will decide who will represent, who gets the chance to further represent the United States in those 2 Paralympic events, and then potentially in the other events as well. We still have the opportunity to qualify more, but there are more steps in the process for those other, 6? Let me do my math. 14 minus 8, other 6 boat classes that the United States has yet to qualify. What are the 3 events that we have qualified on the Olympic side that will be decided this morning? Those 5 tickets that will be punched
those
to Paris
5
today.
tickets will be the women's single, and then both the men's and the women's pairs.
Okay.
So they finished high enough last year at the World Championship to qualify the United States to have a seat at the table for the Olympics. But it's now deciding which actual athlete is going to be in that seat.
And so, it's an interesting thing in our sport where you might be the athlete at the previous year's World Championships. So last year, the 2023 World Championships. You might be the person in the seat that qualifies the boat for the United States to go to the Olympic Games. Mm-hmm. But that does not mean that you will be in the boat that goes to the Olympic Games. And that is certainly something I know in my prior rowing history, that there were athletes that qualified the event but didn't necessarily make it to the Olympic Games. So, we have some athletes who are vying for spots on their first Olympic or Paralympic teams, all the way through athletes who are vying for potentially their 5th Olympic Games, if I remember correctly. Yeah, potentially their 5th Olympic Games. But no matter how little or how much experience you have, there are no guarantees. And I definitely bumped into some athletes yesterday that, even though they have a lot of experience, I said, "How you doing?" And the answer was just nervous, warm, but nervous.
Yeah. You never know, because anything can happen on race day.
Anything can happen on race day. Mm-hmm. The wonderful thing about this course that they get to race on today here at Nathan Benderson Park in Sarasota, Florida, is that it's an Olympic caliber course. Yeah. If you wanted to hold the Olympic Games here, you could. Mm-hmm. What exactly makes this course special? I know you and I have both rowed here.
Yes.
You've raced here.
I raced here when the 2017 World Championships were here. I mean, the conditions are great. Wind direction, the orientation of the course, the level, fairness across all of the lanes. It can accommodate 8, but here for trials we're racing 6 boats across. Also, the ability to have the warm-up area, how close it is to be able to access different things outside, to be able to drive off and go to your room or whatever. It's just an easy access. It's not schlepping out. a really long ways away to get to someplace. But I mean, the spectator area is a fantastic setup to be able to watch racing. I mean, it was made for rowing. So that's a really special thing to have in the United States.
And made for rowing and dedicated to rowing, where it is a fixed body of water that was specifically built for our sport, just the same as you might build a gym with a basketball court. This is, I mean, the race is 1.25 miles long. It's 2,000 meters, 5 laps on a track. I like to explain that to people. So it's much larger than building, a much larger undertaking than building a gym and a basketball court. But it's basically like a giant swimming pool with a separate dedicated warm-up area. You know, so that if you were, and why does that matter? I mean, if you're racing, that means that someone can warm up and their wake, because the different boats create wake, it's not going to impact your race. It's literally on the other side of a wall. So the water is mostly contained or separated. Even we were talking about the orientation of the course. It's even oriented so that if you're watching, you know, the sun's not going to be in your eyes. It's oriented with the prevailing winds. You know, we don't call them world records in rowing. We call them world best times because it's an outdoor sport. You ever have a coach say that to you? It's an outdoor sport.
It's an outdoor sport. But I believe there were a couple of world best times set here that have since been beaten, but because of the course and the way how speedy it can be.
It's the start bridge is going to be oriented toward the south, and then the finish line is going to be oriented toward the north. Now that I say start bridge, let's explain what is a start bridge. Let's tell people what that's all about.
So in the sport of rowing, when you start a race, the point is to have everyone's bow balls at the same level, so you get the most equal start.
The very tip of the boat,
The very tip of the boat is all aligned, all 6 boats across. And in order to accommodate that, the boats are held by usually volunteers, but on the start platform. And that's a way to secure the boats from moving around in space.
And that way everyone is absolutely dead level, the same way that the score is 0-0 at the beginning of any game sport.
Like starting blocks, I guess.
The starting blocks, like everybody is exactly where they need to be. If there's any little wind up there, you know, they make sure that the boat is as straight as possible, that they, you know, at least as straight as they would like it to be, to make sure that you go as straight as you can down the course. Now, all of the boats that we will see racing this morning do not have a driver. They do not have a coxswain. The athletes are all facing one way. The boat is going this way. The athletes are facing this way. So how is it that they go straight once they take off? You and I both know the answer to this. Sometimes they don't.
There's no steering wheel. So depending on the boat class, there's going to be...
imagine?
Just your hands are... Don't let go of the handles. So in a boat, say like a pair, and in the quads, those boats are going to actually have a steering mechanism inside the shoe that connects to a rudder off the back of the boat. So as you're rowing, usually it's designated to just one person to be able to control that toe. So every time they're taking a stroke, they're moving that foot just ever so slightly in case they need to make adjustments. But usually you can just steer straight because you're looking at the lane lines. You're looking at the buoys as they go past.
And the two-way down.
Right. So you're not, you don't have to actively turn behind you, see what's going on. But then for the boats, like, I mean, all of this and goes in most of the sculling boats, because your pressure is applied equally, the goal is that you should be rowing fairly straight anyways, but you still make those minor adjustments with pressure off of your oars and off your handles to be able to make those minor changes.
Sometimes like a tiny bit of length or something like that. There is one boat, at least, because some people, I've always preferred toe steering in a pair, which is 2 people, 1 oar each. You know, that's the difference between sweeping and sculling is, you know, sweep oars, you have 1 oar per person. Sculling, you have 2 oars per person.
Like sweeping a broom.
For all the family out there who doesn't know those, that you don't know, or the people that have stumbled upon this and they're wondering, what the heck are we about to show?
What's this rowing thing?
And speaking of what the heck are we about to show, it looks like racing is about to get underway. This is the start bridge that we were just mentioning, and we are looking actually toward the west because it is right just after sunrise here at Nathan Benderson Park in Sarasota, Florida. And the first of our 10 races that you will see happening this morning is about to get rolling here in just a couple of minutes, unless they decide to start early. We're looking for that wave of a hand to let us know. Right now, sitting at the starting line, who do we see up there, Grace?
We have Andrew Mangan representing Texas.
So he's going to be the entry for the PR1 men's single. This is one of the 2 Paralympic class events that we will see this morning. And we were so fortunate to sit down with the para high performance director Ellen Minsner yesterday and get some really good insight about this sport and the development that we're looking to do through this sport. It is such an incredible thing. It became a Paralympic event in 2008 and has grown from there. And it looks like we have a start in our first race of the morning. When we say PR1, you'll see that on the screen there, that it speaks to the different levels of ability for the athletes in terms of most the highest level of impairment here for the athletes. So you have PR1, PR2, and PR3 are the three different levels. In PR1, you have a fixed, non-sliding seat with a supportive back. Now, in terms of the level of impairment, from what we learned yesterday, it does not speak to different types of injuries or things like that. It's just how what level of impairment do you have in your sport?
Yeah, they're classified. Para athletes are classified by their functional movement versus any particular injury or disability.
Yes.
So you can have a combination of different people experiencing different things in the same lineup. So here we're watching a single sculler. The next event will be a mixed double, two people, and then the PR3. A variety of things. So this way, it's being able to classify people by what they're able to do, by their ability.
And we were speaking yesterday a little bit that one of the key focuses for the development of a pipeline for these events is to focus on the fixed seat events, the PR1 and the PR2, because there is such a range of levels out there. PR3 athletes oftentimes have the opportunity to compete with their college teams.
Yes.
And so, I know that an athlete.
Yep.
I know that an athlete. I know that a couple of athletes that I've gotten to coach in the past have competed at the Paralympic Games, and they were collegiate athletes on current collegiate teams. So here in the picture, again, we have Andrew Mangan. He is a 2023 graduate of Stanford University in computer science from Buffalo, New York. He's a two-time senior team member already, 2022, 2023, so had a little bit of experience while still in college, certainly with sights set on making the team for this year's Paralympic Games, which will be held in Paris, France. I wish I spoke more French, I guess, but will be held this year in Paris, France, shortly after the Olympic Games. So August 30th to September 1st are the competition dates for that event that will be held, again, later this summer.
And young enough to maybe have some eyes on LA 2028 as well. I think that speaks to the developing of a pipeline for these types of events. We want to have a strong showing for our own Olympics.
Absolutely. And, I something else that I learned yesterday that I didn't realize is that there are more Paralympic events that or sports teams that are happening at the collegiate level.
Yes.
That it's it's not necessarily Olympic caliber events and non-Olympic and Paralympic events racing lists on different teams, but there's the support for that. And I know that we were told that there was Paralympic basketball, full teams out there, things like that are beginning to develop. So it's nice to see that these opportunities, competitive opportunities, are expanding.
Right. At the collegiate level. I think we can spot Ellen, the para high performance officer, falling over there on the bike, as many coaches do, to be able to cheer on their athletes as much as possible, similar to all of the events that are here. Staying internally motivated for this type of race is incredibly difficult. So this is a great opportunity to be able to test out Andrew's race plan, see what kind of time he can lay down, because there's a competitive standard times for para. It's not the depth of data set yet, because this is the data set only goes back to 2017 when para shifted from a 1,000 meter race to a 2,000 meter race. So competitive standard time. What does that mean? We'll see it kind of pop up on the data, the results off to the side. But what that is it combines world best times. It's a calculation of relative speed based on the drag of the boat and the weight of the athlete, things like that. But an analysis from different World Cups, World Championships, previous Paralympic and Olympic Games. And it's just to be able to see, how do we stack up with the clock? And that's really challenging to do in an outdoor sport, like you said, with the flow of the water and the wind. So it's kind of, it's a gauge. It's a range. So he may be racing for against that competitive standard time.
A couple of different things I'm noticing here is just the very consistent rhythm that he's keeping. The blades are going nicely directly to the water. That's what you want to see. You want to make sure that they aren't going up as you get toward the catch, which is basically that kind of full stretched point there where the hands are long, the body is shifted over a little bit, but you can also see how they bury and they just disappear under the water there, and it seems very consistent. Finishing in front, elbows nice and relaxed and low to be able to really keep the joints nice and stable there. As we are just over halfway, it looks like we have about 750 meters to go in this race, just over 5 minutes down already. Something I noticed yesterday is not only did we say that, Andrew is a recent grad of Stanford University, but unless I read his bio incorrectly, his birthday was just on Thursday, which was the first day of racing here in Sarasota, Florida at Nathan Benderson Park. It was born 24 years old, just a couple of days ago. So what a gift to oneself.
Absolutely. Yeah. Come out here and go for para trials.
Yeah. And potentially, punch that ticket to Paris for yourself. Now, we were talking earlier about the development of a pipeline for these fixed seat PR1 and PR2 events. CRI, Community Rowing Incorporated in Boston, Massachusetts. Those of you that know rowing know CRI well. They row they have the red as one of their flagship colors. They're very identifiable when they come to races. But that's the high performance center for para rowing. There are also a couple of kind of satellite centers. They're popping up throughout the country. But the kind of three key ones that tend to send athletes, that put athletes on the Paralympic team, are West Side out of Buffalo, New York, Atlanta Rowing Association down in Atlanta, of course. The coach down there is actually going to be the development camp coach. And then BIAC, Bear Island Aquatic Center out of Northern California. So those are outside of the high performance center that CRI has been. Those are kind of other feeder programs that tend to kind of send people there. I know that the two PR3 events were camp selected events that happened in January. That means those athletes were invited to a camp where they were then, put in different combinations of lineups and then selected. And that range of ages kind of ran from high school. There's a high school athlete that'll be an alternate on this year's team. Amazing experience for that young guy. And then athletes who are either still in college or just about a year out. I believe Ellen said yesterday, a year out of college, which would be Andrew's situation here, a year out of college.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, like you said, that was the 4 and the double. This we're watching now is the PR1 men's single with Andrew in it. I think he's pretty excited to add to the family history here. We also found out that he has a sister who is an Olympian in alpine skiing, went to the Beijing Games recently, so high caliber family over there.
Sports running the family. He's the 5th of 6 children, so I imagine it's a very athletic family. I know that they have some influences outside of the family too, good family friends who, really champion movement and exercise. And I know that there was a person who was super meaningful to Andrew named John Offit, if I'm pronouncing the name correctly. I apologize if I am not, but listed as his personal hero for really championing exercise and movement, and has helped Andrew in the past find Paralympic rowing, or at least get back into sports.
Yeah.
So I'm curious. I know that for today's racing, it's finals day. Something that we don't normally get to do is actually run downstairs very, very quickly and get to speak to the athletes when they are done. So throughout today's racing, we will have an opportunity to talk to the folks that come across the finish line to give you a little bit of insight, because I'm curious what Andrew is thinking at this point on the course, what's going through his mind, potentially when he woke up this morning, maybe yesterday, all week. Who's the boat? Who's the trailing boat there?
Right. So that is our chase launch of the referees. So there are a number of referees who are able to help facilitate fairness and safety at every single regatta, be it a national championship or a world classifying event like this one, to be able to go on to the Olympic and Paralympic trials. So they are a safety there. You'll see them also from every single race following the field.
Following the field. And speaking of following the field, it looks like the buoys have disappeared, but they have not. That is the red buoys that indicate 250 meters to go. And just as we were talking a little bit about the trailing boat there, the safety launch and the referees to make sure everything is fair and square, it looked like Andrew took up the rate a little bit, went from that super consistent bass rhythm that he's kept the entire way very consistently down the course, and has revved it up because he knows he's hunting the finish line here.
Yep. And also still staying very, very level. You don't see the blades going really, really deep, just staying as efficient as possible in these last couple strokes. We like to say in rowing that red means go when it's that solid red line, because you know that it's just strokes to the end of the line.
And it looks as though the blades have gotten even more direct. You can see them just, the whites of them disappear a little bit more quickly as you would to count them. That's your stroke rate, right? The number of strokes that you're taking every minute, just getting quicker and quicker as he closes in on the finish. You can hear people down on the shore also starting to scream. Even though it's just after 8 a.m., they are down here in show of support of what is happening here. This is the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Team Trials rowing, and this is the first race of the day. You are about to hear that horn go, and there you go, crossing the finish line unofficially in first. Remember, all of the racing today, if you would like to find the times, the splits, not the stroke rates necessarily, the time, the splits, and that official stamp in the books, go to herenow.com. If you are, obviously you're here watching us. If you have friends that are not, tell them to head over to Peacock, NBCSports.com, or the NBC Sports app to catch all of this morning's action.
Congratulations to Andrew for taking away this event. Next steps for him will be to go to the final qualification regatta. Now, it sounds to introduce people to how this system works. There's the boats that are qualified. That means that they performed well enough in the prior year. But then for those boats, the boat classes that did not qualify at last year's World Championships, such as this one, he needed to get 7th. He got 14th. But the next step is to go to Lucerne for the qualification regatta, where he needs to take top 1. Yep. It looks to be it's projected to be a well-subscribed event, so it'll be very tough competition, so great for him to be able to test the speed here. And
shift focus, because that race is later in the year in May in Lucerne, Switzerland, so it's April. You've got a few weeks to kind of collect things. I know, whenever you finish a race, the first thing you do is, recover from that race.
Yeah.
But you also kind of think about what just happened. You write down maybe the 5, 10, 15, sometimes there are 20 things that you think you could have done better. And you don't address all 20 of them. You pick 1 or 2 things that you can work on for either that week or the following week or the weeks to come, so that you can improve before that next race, which is a very important one.
Right, absolutely. And it is tough, depending on which event it is, between para or Paralympic. It's either only top 1 or top 2. Out of that regatta, get a spot to go to the Olympics or Paralympics.
We say regatta, we say Lucerne, Switzerland, but we're talking about, last time I checked, there are more than 200 national Olympic committees out there. So all of the nations across the world that are in rowing will send athletes there, should they so choose, across all of the continents, say Antarctica.
Yeah. There are continental qualifiers. There's some different spheres in there, too, for other areas. But the final qualification regatta is sometimes referred to as the last chance regatta for exactly that reason.
All right, we are shifting gears from the PR1 classification to the PR2 classification. So that is the next level. These two athletes are also on a fixed seat. They have a fixed non-sliding seat, but they do not have a supportive back here in this event. At the starting line right now, there was no time trial in this event, as we have the one boat on the field up there at the start right now. The remaining races that you will see throughout the day had a time trial the other day on Thursday when racing kicked off. Everyone had a day off on Friday to kind of recover. Semifinals were held yesterday morning, and then today again finals. So the PR2 mixed double here with Russell Gernot and Maddie Eberhard.
And they've got some experience together. I believe that this is the same combination as last year. So it's good to be able to have that consistency, that time spent together, putting in those reps, as you will, together between your training and your racing opportunities. So great for them to be able to have a test through this event.
You know, and you mentioned earlier that the capacity of this race course, you can race 8 lanes across here, but we race at most 6. At most 6, depending on the number of entries. You know, here in the mixed double, Russell, who's in the stroke seat, is has made 5 senior national teams, 1 Paralympic team back in Tokyo in 2001. Maddie is a 2-time senior team member in 2019, 2023. When she's not rowing, is on the para hockey team, is on the United States women's para hockey team as well, and is a 2-time world champion.
Wow,
that's
crazy. Yeah.
Also a recent grad of Canisius College. So, and when I say recent grad, I should say this year we'll be graduating a 2024 grad of Canisius
College.
What year is it, folks? of Canisius College in sport and exercise healthcare. I love seeing athletes interested in sport beyond, the physical nature, movement. You talked about functional movement earlier, exercise, beyond just the sport itself, to learn a little bit more about it. And here we are. The race in the PR2 mixed double is underway here at Nathan Benderson Park in Sarasota, Florida.
And similar to the finish, that first stretch of course is going to be solid reds, where you're going to be having a lot of your higher strokes. So you're seeing the flicker of those blades at a higher cadence in the initial part of the race. We call that your starting sequence. Then you're building up your stroke rate to something higher to get that boat up to speed. And then, as depending on one's race plan, you'll then stride it out to a base rhythm to be able to hold a base speed. Now, depending on how people do things, depends on what your plan is, what you've decided with, in this case, your team member or your coach has said maybe the best plan for you, trying to just be as consistent as possible as you go down this race course, because things are going to be burning pretty fast in the sport of rowing. It looks calm and beautiful, but let me tell you, it's fire inside.
Yes, and we talk about the perseverance of athletes and the mindset of athletes, and really it's endurance athletes, because when things start to hurt, you still have to say, you still have to have that mental acuity, that focus. And if anything, when things start to hurt, you almost become more focused. There is just something, dare I say, primal about it. That physically pushing yourself little by little each day allows you to push yourself in big ways down the line. It's that consistency of meeting the challenge and stepping to the challenge. Sometimes we don't always step to it, but that's also some part of practice, and part of what you learn over time is stepping to the challenge and really developing that toughness over time.
Yeah, getting comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Yeah, and that really is that kind of that mental stamina, that mental toughness that we talk about with athletes. But I would argue, call me biased, but I would argue with endurance athletes in particular. Now, this is another of those boat classes that is not a camp selected boat class. It is a trials selected boat class. That's why we're here at the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Team Trials rowing. That's what it means to be a trials selected crew. You are here. But this event is also not yet qualified for the Paralympic Games for the United States. So as a next step for this event, even coming across the finish line in first today, what would that mean for these two in terms of steps in the process?
Right. So next steps would be for them to head to Lucerne for the final qualification regatta, where they need to finish top 2. Now, they finished in 10th place last year, so they are going to be competing with another 3 squads most competitively to be able to claim that top 2 spots to be able to go to Paris.
And that'll be later this year in Paris, France. August 30th to September 1st is the Paralympic Games later this year. But again, there's another stepping stone between here and there. Of the 10 races that we will see this morning, 3 series of winners are the 3 boats that will know that they're going to Paris pending USOPC approval. The remaining 7 boat classes will have to go to that final Olympic and Paralympic qualification regatta in May. We've seen more consistency, just increasing consistency down the race course here. Again, this crew, they as they take off from the starting line, we talked a little bit in the past about the double being a very challenging event to race really, really well. It seems so simplistic in that you each have 2 oars, you're both sculling, and that there are just 2 of you, fewer people to match. But it is incredibly challenging, and quite honestly, I don't have all the words to describe why it is so challenging. It's very tippy, it's fast, it's...
Yeah, and I'd like to think of it, too, as like you have to become one in a double, but it's contributing to an average. So there's a lot more that can go off to be able to pull that median either way. So being able to spend a lot of time together as these two have, because they've been a combination for a time, it's really repetition. It's really time spent, and it's trying to also fit each other's reach and trying to fit each other's length. And so it is quite a balance to be able to strike right.
Sometimes I when I coach athletes, I'd like to say, you got to find the range. Like, do the good things and the not so good things. Take the good strokes and the not so good strokes to figure out what is right, because somewhere in that range is what you want to consistently do, and that's part of why we do take so many strokes in this sport, is to figure out. We say you got to figure out what is wrong. In order to figure out what is right, and being okay with, I missed that one, or that was a good one or a not so good one, so that when you do get on the course, you just lay down pretty much just mostly good strokes. It looks as though this duo is racing with a higher stroke rate than the previous race that we saw, and to maintain a higher stroke rate for a prolonged period of time, that speaks to that burn that you were talking about just a moment ago.
The burn and the endurance. Another thing to consider, too, with being able to find to optimize your good combination with the doubles partner is also your rigging and your equipment, which I think they've spent a fair amount of time doing for this double. Maddie especially actually is trying out a prototype of a new fixed seat design. So this is a new thing for our Paralympic team to be able to have access to make things more comfortable, more customized, to be able to just focus on the rowing, focus on the racing at hand and making the equipment fit the athletes.
Yeah, because, it's the equipment itself shouldn't be uncomfortable. You want to make everything
it's the aerobic thing that should be uncomfortable.
Yes, you are about to put yourself in a world of hurt, so reserve all those discomfort points for your choosing rather than how the seat fits you or how the boat fits you or how the rigging fits you. And there is a lot of science, there's physics involved, but there also is a little bit of trial and error, a little bit of tinkering. Sometimes coaches will get out there and just eyeball it. Are these the angles that I want? Are the athletes rowing the way that they should? Are they rowing in the best way that puts them in the best possible position to succeed? And then I want to bring the boat to them rather than having them, reach out to fit the hull itself. Make sure that they are strong and powerful, and then we rig around that so that they have the greatest chance for success and efficiency. Over long races, the more efficient you are, the better it's going to show up over time. When you have a super short race, you can kind of get away maybe a little bit with the technical or the rigging itself, but over this long period of time, and I know that Ellen Minzer became the Para High Performance Director in 2019, and I know that was a key that Paralympic rowing has been a focus of hers for a lot longer than that, highly invested in it. So her keen eye relative to this sport, greatly appreciated, looking to advance it not just from an athletic standpoint, but from a equipment and overall, like, everything about the sport standpoint. So I love that there's even prototypical parts in there.
Yep. Things are changing for the para world. Again, we're really trying to put together a focus on the pipeline, especially for the 28 games, where we'll have the Paralympics there in a couple of years. So being able to develop these athletes to perform at a high level, be able to offer new race opportunities, to experience more elite racing experiences. I know that we talked with Ellen yesterday of having a lot of other events going on for these para groups. So putting together some events for Canadian Henley, putting together a development camp to be able to identify more athletes. And what do you recall about where people can find that information?
If you go to U.S. Rowing, you can also go to Regatta Central. There are a couple of ID camps. There was one held in March. There's another in-person ID camp in the greater Columbus area. I would imagine that I walked onto rowing in college.
Absolutely.
I didn't have rowing experience until I was in college. So, and even if you don't have rowing experience, if this is of interest to you, go to usrowing.org or Regatta Central, search camps and clinics. Look for U.S. Rowing Paralympic ID camps. There's one in person in April in the greater Columbus area. There's also a virtual one, which will cast a broader net rather than having to be there in person. Visual or physical impairments is what they are looking at. And these are Paratalent ID camps that you'll be looking for. As we're talking, you see those red buoys. I just, you'll hear us say it a bunch of times this morning. My favorite phrase about the red buoys, Grace, I'm going to make you say it.
Red means go.
Red means go, and these two athletes know it. They're going to ramp it up here in the closing quarter of the race. Well, gosh, when I say quarter, closing eighth, less than an eighth of a race. You can see their speed quicken, their bodies quicken, the hands, the blades themselves, as they are coming down to their final few strokes of this 2,000-meter race in the PR2 mixed double final here at the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Team Trials rowing. Just a couple strokes to go. And you hear that horn bringing them across the line. In the second race of the day, and our second and final Paralympic event of the day, the PR2 mixed double. Both of these crews will need to go to the final Olympic qualification regatta after this, but before they do that, we will have some conversation with them here shortly to find out maybe a little bit about what they're thinking, what's going on, and hear out of their own words, from their own mouths, what exactly it means to them to race at this race, what it means to race in an Olympic and Paralympic year. And what the next steps potentially look like for them. There are all kinds of things I wish that we could ask them, but we only have a little bit of time with each one on the dock because racing will continue all morning long between now and just a little after 10 o'clock. Our last race of the morning is set to go down at 10:15, which means racing will wrap right around 10:30. But again, even at the end of the day, please hang around just for a few extra minutes because we will bring you interviews and we will close out and recap racing for the day and give you an idea of what comes next for these athletes. Beautiful shot down the course of Nathan Benderson Park. We talked about that separate warm-up area versus the race area. The wave attenuator is that big, long line, the concrete line that you see there. That was put into place to help separate the warm-up and cool-down areas, specifically to prevent waves from developing on the course, specifically to prevent wakes from other boats to end up on the course, just to add to the fairness of the overall racing that happens here at Nathan Benderson Park in Sarasota, Florida.
And I'm Grace Latz down here with the winner of the PR1 men's single, Andrew Mangan. Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, super exciting.
Yeah. So, how are you feeling right now?
Good. A little tired, but excited. It was a good race. Yeah. Have my work cut out for me in the next couple weeks, but.
Right. So next steps for you will be to go to the final qualification regatta in Lucerne. What are you looking to do between this race and that race?
The past couple months, been working a lot on just like overall technique, volume. I think the next like 6 weeks, kind of focus a bit more on parts of the race, like my start, getting the middle 1,000 locked in, but just keep getting faster. Yeah. Can get a bit stronger then too.
Oh yeah, you've got some time. So what were you thinking during that particular race? We watched you from start to finish the whole way down, but what was running through your mind?
I had a pretty solid race plan that I was trying to stick to. It was a bit windier than I was hoping, and my boat kind of has a sail on it, so that really slows me down. But I was trying to take that into account and just like stick to the race plan as much as I could.
And that you did. Well, congratulations. Go and race hard in Lucerne.
Yeah, thank you. Go USA.
We are coming to you live from Nathan Benderson Park in Sarasota, Florida with the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Team Trials rowing. And we are shifting gears here from the Paralympic categories to the Olympic categories. This first of the Olympic class events that is happening this morning is the final of the men's single. This is finals day. Every race that you will watch this morning is a final. Some of the events have already been qualified by the United States. So we are looking for the representatives, the people that will represent the United States in those events. That's the women's single, women's pair, and men's pair. This event, the men's single, because it has yet to be qualified, this will decide who represents the United States at the Olympic qualification regatta to be held next month in May in Switzerland. Whomever comes across in first and is stamped as official, again, all results are unofficial until you go to herenow.com and see that official stamp in the books. Let me backtrack and tell you who's on the field here. From 18 entries that began this weekend of racing on Thursday in a time trial, we are down to the top 6. All 6 of the athletes that are on the field right now, when it comes to a time trial, you race in a single file style where you are only racing the clock, racing yourself. You don't have athletes next to you. So sometimes when you race a time trial, the top 6 athletes don't necessarily find their way to the final. But in this case, in the men's single, the top 6 out of the time trial did find their way here from the time trial through a semifinal that was held yesterday to today's final. In lane 1, as you are looking, it is as the referee reads left to right. So put yourself staring down from the start bridge. Imagine you're standing on the dock and staring down the race course from the start to the finish line and read left to right. That's how these lanes are set. Lane 1 is Breck Duncan out of Penn AC. Lane 2, Isaiah Harrison out of California Rowing Club. Lane 3 is Elliott Putnam from the NYAC, that's the New York Athletic Club. Lane 4 is Cedar Cunningham. Lane 5 is Jacob Pleal out of the Green Racing Project. And Lane 6 is Casey Fuller from Saugatuck. Your top 3 places out of the time trials were Pleal in lane 5 was the fastest time out of the time trial. The second fastest time out of the time trial was Elliott Putnam in lane 3. And then the third fastest time out of the time trial was Cedar Cunningham there in lane 4. Now, in yesterday's semifinal action, though, the 3 fastest times out of each of their 3 respective semifinals were Putnam, Cunningham, and Pleal. That's why they're in those center lanes. The fastest time, though, was Elliott Putnam. 7:05.35 was the fastest time out of yesterday's semifinal. Second fastest time, get out your calculators, folks. 7:05.76. So a very small margin separating time-wise. But again, they were in separate races. They weren't side by side. Hard to cross-compare, but certainly if you're up here nerding out on numbers like we do sometimes, you know, we love that. We go, oh, it's gonna be an interesting race that is set to start here at 8:30 a.m. The men's single final of the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Team Trials rowing about to start. You know, you have a range of experiences here on the course right now. You have Putnam, who was on the under-23 team for the United States in 2017, was a senior team member in 2023. And then you have, Pleal over there as well, who is a 2-time under-23 team member, 1-time senior team member, 1-time Pan American team member. So a range of levels of experience here. And I know that some of these names ring a bell because I've been so fortunate. We've both been fortunate enough to get to call some races at the U.S. Rowing Youth National Championships, and hearing some of these names ring a bell that potentially some of these athletes have been involved. Oh, it looks like we have a
restart
potential
about to go off. Yep.
Restart. Not certain what happened there on the course, but you'll notice that the boats have paused. That's not just my eyes that have that are deceiving me, but it looks like in the lane 5 over there, it looks like Pleal perhaps had a little something happen off of the start, and so was unable to carry on from the very beginning. So that's also another reason why we have that race launch. We were talking about referees. That's why the referees are there. Now, in the early stages, you mentioned the different colored buoys in the beginning of the race. In the early stages, if something were to happen like this. It has to happen early on. It has to happen in just the first couple of strokes of the race for the referees to call everyone back. And I got to say, you're in that moment, and you're in a single.
It can be a little nerves are high at that point. And when this happens, whether you were part of a boat where this is, your actions affected this unfolding, whatever it was.
Whether it was your hole that was impacted, or you are the racer that has no idea what's going on.
Right.
Yep.
It can throw people off a bit, but again, to be able to perform at a high level in the single, these are all the best men's single scullers trying to get a spot at the Olympic Games. First, they'll next have to go to the Lucerne qualification regatta, but you have to stay very internal. They're very practiced. Like we said, a lot of them have had junior experience, U23 experience, senior and Pan Am experience. But for every single one of them, this is their first stab at going to represent the U.S. on an Olympic team in the men's single.
First step, first opportunity to sitting at such a high stakes event. If you're in the boat that didn't have something occur, you also don't want to stop, because sometimes they don't call it as a fair. The breakage or whatever happened doesn't actually fit within the rules, and the race should actually continue. So you kind of have that moment of hesitation: should I keep going? Should I not keep going? Until you are absolutely certain that the referees have called everyone back, and clearly here they have called the athletes back to the start. So they will go back to the start. There are volunteers, all of those little fingers those docks that are sticking out. There's someone there lying on their belly in the Sarasota sun with their arms outstretched to literally hold the stern deck. That is the trailing tip of each boat, so that it stays straight, to help them align, because they're facing one way and racing in the opposite way. So they're going to take a moment to get realigned, and they're going to wait till they're pretty much straight, and that everyone is aligned, not just straight down the course, but from the side. If you were to draw a laser line across, they want everyone to be exactly the same distance from the starting line.
And what we saw in the para events, we did see a boot come into play. So sometimes another thing that you'll see on screen from that side angle is this little cup or shield that is able to hold the bow ball in place. So we see it here on the side view. You see that little it's a metal shaped V. And so the athletes are going to fit the forwardmost part of their boat into that boot. And that is down to as close as they can get, making sure everybody is aligned completely across.
And the whole system comes up together. You can see the empty lanes have those, it almost looks like a square from here, almost like a lantern sitting on the water there. That's just one less stressor for the athletes to worry about. If there's any little wind that might be puffing side, that you don't have to constantly recorrect your point. You can just let it be. You've got a kind volunteer there helping on one end. You've got the boot helping on the other end, and then you can just sit ready to go. And here they go. You saw that boot disappear under the water. I always loved the sound of that brah, and the kind of bubbly sound as it drops down to let all of the boats take off here as we have a start. It looks like in the men's single final, the top 6 finishers out of the time trial, the top 6 finishers through the semifinals yesterday are on the field as the referee reads lanes 1 through 6 left to right. Breck Duncan, Penn AC, Isaiah Harrison, California, Elliott Putnam, New York Athletic Club, Cedar Cunningham, Penn AC, Jacob Pleel, Green Racing Project, and Casey Fuller out of Saugatuck. And it looks like Pleel is out in front with an early, quick start after a little bit of a snafu there in that first start.
Definitely having a bit of a higher rate there, just trying to get that bow ball out in front. Everybody knows this is going to be a very tight race. When we looked at the times 1 through 4 or coming into this race, they're all within two-ish seconds of each other. There's a lot of fast speed in this final.
And with being within 2 seconds or so of one another, that means they all have overlap. So if you look directly sideways on the course, that means there is no space between boats. About 3 seconds is a boat length of speed, a boat length of distance. But that's what those times were from what we saw out of the semifinals. But it looks like Pleel, at least right now, has found another gear, because over on the far side, Isaiah Harrison in that almost orangish hole was the next closest. But now now that it appears that there is an advance occurring from Cedar Cunningham in the red hole. The reason I bring up Isaiah Harrison is that he and Jacob Leal saw each other in their same semifinal, and they were the closest competitors there, going top 1 and 2 in yesterday's semis. But right now, open water as we cross the first 500 meters, the first quarter down for Pleal out of the Green Racing Project from Vashon Island.
Yeah, definitely an advantage.
He's from Vashon Island, I should say. I should separate that. I see that in my mind. Let me clarify for those of you. Green Racing Project is in
Yeah,
in
so
Vermont.
again, speaking to that spread, it's a confidence boost to be able to try to get out ahead, and you can then respond instead of react to what's happening in the field. Again, rowers are seated backwards, not seeing what's ahead of them, so to be able to see the field behind you is a huge advantage. So Jacob's looking to snag this spot to represent the U.S. at the final qualification regatta away from Elliot Putman, who raced this event last year at the World Championships. Now, he got 19th at that event last year in 2023 at the final qualification regatta. They will need to get top 2 in order to go on to the Olympic Games.
Now, with the space here between himself and the remaining field, this is a final, folks. So you must win this race to have that opportunity to go to that next step before potentially making the Olympic Games. And that is a bit of distance there. It looks like 5, maybe 6 seconds or more right now from bow ball to bow ball for Pleal, who is out in front. We're in the second 500 of the race, so still plenty of race left to be rowed. Sometimes athletes look to get out early, shoot out early. Sometimes athletes have a faster second half of the race. So the question is when we cross that kind of reset point of, all right, the first 1,000, you're kind of killing time. It's that you got to go to that place that hurts just enough and then keep on trucking, even though that burn really begins to set in. Not at the 1,000, not at the third 500. It sets in 45 seconds into the race.
Yeah, your body's deprived of oxygen, and it's just trying to rely on your training from that point on.
Yes.
And all of these athletes have a depth of experience. Jacob having, again, like we said, U23 experience, Pan Am experience, senior team experience. Elliot Putnam, he's been to the final qualification regatta previously in the single in 2021 for the Tokyo Games. Cedar Cunningham has been in and around the selection camp system, but relatively young, so his eyes are on 2028, but great for him to be performing at such a high level right here, right now. Brett Duncan, recent Wisconsin grad, throwing his hat in the ring here, only graduated a year ago. Casey Fuller, Pan Am men's double, in all these other events as well. And Isaiah Harrison, a name we've seen around the circuit in the U23 and junior world, very competitive in the men's single in both of those categories as
currently
well.
Currently in that red hull, the second fastest contender on the field right now behind Jacob Pleal is Cedar Cunningham out of Penn AC. That's the other boat that you see in the picture right and now. And then you see from Isaiah Harrison, Casey Fuller, Breck Duncan, there is some similar speed on the course happening through the trailing 3 boats. And it does look like Cedar Cunningham is starting to cut into the lead that our early leader, Jacob Pleal, had. But still, a bit of open water separates the two, so it's a couple of boat lengths with very little left to be rowed. We said the fastest times were right around 7:05, so we have just under 2 minutes, right around 2 minutes left in this race. Not quite into that last 500, but soon to be. So in the single, it is a long race, but a coach told me long ago, never run out of time to go fast.
Yep.
And, there we are. We have Cedar Cunningham, who was making that surge. But it also looks as though Casey Fuller out of Saugatuck is putting on a surge as well, maintaining contact with Cedar Cunningham, perhaps out of the corner of the eye, saw the move that was being made and decided to also try to make a move there to see if they could get back into that, again, early and quick start that just seemed to extend for Jacob Pleal. You can see the red placards in the background, all those bicycles on that path. We are into the last 500. I got to say, I can't omit this. Jacob Pleal, 6'10".
I know.
And rowing is about length, so there is certainly long leg length there. When your legs are very long relative to the rest of your body, long arms and legs, short torso is beneficial in this sport because you can really just rely on big levers without having to do a ton with your body, which means more pushing. It's a push sport.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Cedar Cunningham also about that height. So that length really paying off here in the men's single, trying to snag a spot to represent the U.S. at the final qualification regatta on their way towards the Olympics. And it does look like the buoys have changed. They are in that last 250 meters of this race of the men's single. Jacob Pleal still in the lead here at this point. Field trying to close in on him, but he is just trying to stay ahead, trying to keep that 4-second lead ahead of the game, trying to secure his spot here at the United States Olympic and Paralympic Team Trials rowing. Wants to be able to cross that line first. He looks confident, just trying to keep it clean all the way down to the line. Nice long strokes here. Seeing a really good push there out of the younger Brett Duncan and Casey Fuller. Casey Fuller trying to get a little bit ahead there of Cedar Cunningham, a little bit of a sprint there. Jacob knowing he's got it in the bag. And congratulations, you have your winner of the men's single here at the United States Olympic and Paralympic Team Trials. That is Jacob Pleal of Green Racing Project, who took it away. So next steps for him will be to go to the final qualification regatta in Lucerne in May, looking to snag top 2 out of that regatta in order to go on to Paris as his next steps on this Olympic journey.
Hi, I'm Amanda Cobb here with U.S. Rowing, live with Russell and Maddie Everhart, Russell Gernhardt. I don't know what's happening. And I'm going to bring in Lindsay Shoup to come talk to them.
It's all good. We're doing this. Yeah, right. Maddie and Russell, first of all, congratulations. And I was going to say introduce yourselves, but I just did that for you. Something I am curious about. I want to know what you were thinking on the start line, and I want to know what you were thinking as you crossed the finish line.
Okay. Well, start line, I was thinking about, how when we get to Lucerne, we're going to be lining up against a bunch of other countries. In this race, we were up against ourselves and the clock, but thinking into the future of what it's going to feel like to be lined up against those boats.
Right on.
Yeah.
And Russell?
Yeah,
how about you?
On the finish, I was focusing on do not listen to the buzzer. Go all the way through the big beamer buoys before you pull up, right? Because in a really close race, it could be someone else's buzzer, and if you pull up, that's it, right? So, yeah.
So row all the way through that line. So what does the rest of today look like for you two?
Rest of the day is going to be the interview process, and heading home after this, but after, a day's worth of celebrating what we did today.
Yeah, right on. So getting back to work, because you know that you have that next race coming up in May against the rest of the world to see what happens with those next steps. Well, I wish you both the best. Have a blast. Have the best time, and good luck with everything that you have coming up.
Thank you.
Great, thank you.
And it looks to be that we have a start with the women's single. This is the women's single. This is a qualified event, meaning that the woman who wins this event will be going to Paris. From lane 1, left to right as the referee reads, or from right to left, we have Sierra Sidris of Next Level over in lane 1, farthest on screen. We have in lane 2, Audrey Borson of White Marsh. Lane 3 in the middle there, Margaret Fellows. In the lead currently is Kara Kohler out of the U.S. Training Center, Sarasota. Lane 5, Cicely Madden out of Cambridge. And Lane 6, Sophie Calabrese of Green Racing Project. It does look like Kara has an early lead here. We're not even through the first 500 meters yet, but she has overlap contact with Maggie Fellows off to her right-hand side. You see her with the yellow shell, red-bodied uniform, but then contact with her on the other side. Closest to the screen is Cicely Madden out of Cambridge. We have 2 Olympians in this race. Kara has a number of teams under her belt between the 2012 bronze in the women's quad, represented the United States in Tokyo as well. Cicely was in the women's quad in the 2020 Tokyo Games. So depth of experience there. Maggie Fellows still trying to keep that contact that she had with Kara when we had that side angle view. But Kara Kohler is in the lead at this moment. Kara's been in the single for a number of years. She actually was our representative from Team USA that qualified this event to be in the Olympics for the U.S. So she placed 4th when she only needed to place 9th in order for the country to be at the Olympic Games. But she placed 4th, and she has been full send this entire year, this whole season, to try to test her speed, see if she can improve upon her performance to be able to snag a medal at the Olympic Games. Testing yesterday, she was out in front by a fair margin, trying to stack up, see how she looked against Margaret Fellows, who in a tighter race was closer in time overall, and Maggie Fellows actually won the winter speed orders, so we know that she has something to bring to the table. Maggie Fellows, I think, is going to be an interesting one to watch here. She's got everything to gain here.
That's Maggie Fellows in the red there. Kara Kohler out there in front with that white visor. That's like a trademark outfit for her. If some people have gold chains, hers is the trademark visor. And I've mentioned it before that I appreciate how steady it is. It really, you're moving back and forth so much that head just stays nice and steady, and that actually, helps you kind of stay forward. Some fantastic quickness happening. You can see that sense of urgency in how these athletes are rowing. It's a composed urgency, though. On race day, compared to training, compared to day in and day out against your teammates, against your other athletes that are rowing as singles. But on race day, especially athletes that have been to the Olympic Games before, especially when there's a lot on the line here, there's a lot at stake. Kohler is the one that qualified this event at the World Championships last year, but must win this race in order to be the person that gets to accept that bid for the United States, pending U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Committee approval. I know I bumped into her for just a moment yesterday and mentioned, how you doing? Nervous, right? Nervous, but warm and also ready. Yeah. Right. And it looks as though ready is certainly a way that she put it, keeping it nice and clean here as we get into the closing bit of this race. Speaking of nervous, we talked, you and I at least have talked, that those nerves, that's a good thing.
Absolutely.
That's your body approaching something that you care very deeply about. And it gives you this, you care about that, I'm going to give you a little more. It's just a matter of honing that nervousness over time, which you get enough strokes under your belt, and you really, really do.
And I feel like, having personally rowed with Kara, I've really loved to see her evolution as an athlete. And she started out as a team athlete. She started out in the women's quad.
She have a swimming background, I believe.
Yes, she was a very competitive swimmer in her high school years, went to Cal Berkeley, and then actually started doing seniors team stuff as a collegiate athlete, which is highly unusual. Speaks to her strength and endurance and fitness. But then she was kind of in and out for the 2016 group, but then once she hopped in this single in 2018, she's been flying ever since.
And last year at the World Championships, she coming in 4th within about a boat length of really some of the fastest women on the planet against prior Olympic champions. Laid down speed like that. That bodes well, because she raced this event for the United States in Tokyo. Would certainly be looking to place higher than she did there. And based on what she did last year, that's a confidence boost for sure. Nothing is guaranteed. You never know what's going on, what kind of speed people will pick up in the meanwhile. It's a year of time to train and hone things. And again, you can't do anything about the lanes next to you. You must focus on your race your plan, tweak it, find little things here and there, ways to gain speed. What can you do every single day? And then when you lay down that race, when the time comes, you want to know that you've done absolutely everything you can with every day and moment that you've had to create the best 4 quarters of racing possible. Those red buoys. Kara knows exactly what that means, but still never taking anything for granted, because in this sport, like other race sports, you can never be far enough ahead.
Right. Absolutely. She's had a taste of medals at the world stage before, so she's looking to improve upon her best at the worlds, were a bronze medal in 2019. So she's looking to snag another medal there in Paris.
Speaking of the taste of medal, she probably has that metallic taste in the mouth of just
100.
the exertion that is happening as she comes down to the closing quarters. Maggie Fellows pressing hard as well in that red unisuit. Cicely Madden over on the other side. Those two athletes flanking Kohler as they come to the line, but Kohler is out in front by Clearwater. That means she has quite a number of seconds between, potentially more than 6 or 8 or more seconds between her and the next closest competitor as she comes down to the line. Hearing that buzzer, I wonder what she feels compared to the nerves. Probably glad for them to have helped her across the line. Second buzzer there for Maggie Fellows. Third buzzer for Cicely Madden out of Cambridge. Over on the far side, the rest of the field rounding out will be Adriana Borson, Sophie Calabrese, as well as Sierra Sidris. But out there in front in that white hull, white visor, Kara Kohler, last year's representative in this event for the United States, because she came in 4th in that event last year, qualified the event to be able to go to the Olympic Games. That's one of the 8 events the United States has already qualified for the Olympic Games. And because of her performance here at Nathan Benderson Park in Sarasota, Florida, she has the opportunity to represent the United States once again, pending USOPC approval. Folks, there is a contractual process. There is more paperwork involved in this than you might know. So as soon as she gets off of the water today, there are other steps in place, but they are check marks on paper more than anything else, because she has certainly taken the strokes to put her sights on Paris. The Olympic Games will be covered by NBC Sports later this year, July 27th to August 4th in Paris, France.
And I'm Grace Latz, down here on the dock with the winner of the men's single. Congratulations. How are you feeling?
Pretty tired, but overwhelmed, exuberant, very exciting. So I raced here at the 2021 Olympic Trials in the double. I got 4th, and that was a pretty bitter experience. So to come back and be able to win today was phenomenal. Next step is Lucerne. I don't have that automatic bid to Paris yet, but first step is out of the way, so we're on to the next.
Absolutely. So what were you thinking when you were going through that race just now?
Just get after it. I knew the guys in the field are good and tough competition. So establish myself out quickly, and just keep plugging along.
Yeah, you're still out of breath now. Well, congratulations. Go get them in Lucerne. Right back up to the next race with Lindsay Shoup.
Back up at the start, turning right around for our next event. You just saw the women's single come down the course. That began with 8 entries here at the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Team Trials rowing at Nathan Benderson Park in Sarasota, Florida. Whittled down to 6, down to 1. Up next is the men's double final. Originally 3 entries, 1 scratch, leaves us with 2 here. And on the race course right now in lanes 1 and 2, we have a duo from Next Level. That is Chris Bach and Corey Rogers. And in lane 2, we have a duo out of California, Ben Davison and Soren Kosick. Up there at the start, awaiting the start. That race is due to begin at 9 o'clock. Typically, we wait until the time goes unless the referees check and make sure that everyone is ready, make sure that everything is on par to be set to go. If they would like to go early, that is up to them and up to the athletes that are on the course at this present moment in time this morning. Because it is finals morning, we did have that callback in the men's single, but the beauty of having 15-minute centers means 15 minutes between the start time of each race. Each race does not take 15 minutes, but that allows for a little bit of time should anything happen, should there be a delay for any reason. It ensures that we have enough time to make sure that everything runs fairly. It makes the lives on the athletes and the lives on the referees a little bit easier, knowing that you're not so pressed for overlapping races. 9 o'clock start time for the men's double final here. Now, the men's double, there are 4 basic categories in the Olympic team selection process: camp selected, trial selected, and Olympic qualified and non-qualified. That's kind of if you really distill it down to its parts. This men's double at the previous year's World Championships, so at the 2023 World Championships, had the United States placed in the top 11, it would have qualified the event. The United States was outside the top 11 in the event. So the winner of this race this morning will race the final Olympic and Paralympic qualification regatta in Lucerne, Switzerland, May 19th to 21st. At that point, they will have to come in top 2 against all of the other nations that will also enter that race. After that, should they come in top 2, should the winner of this event then come in top 2 at that event, then they will be named to the Olympic team to go compete in Paris, France, later in July and August of this year. Looks like we're still waiting, which means we are likely not going to have an early start. We're going to wait till 9 o'clock. For those of you who are out there watching, we're here live on NBC Sports. Please tell your friends the ways to watch: Peacock, NBCSports.com, and the NBC Sports app. Spread the word, because this is the Olympic and Paralympic trials rowing. And as I say that, we have a start, and it looks like a clean start so far between these 2 boats. Again, in lane 1, left to right, as the referee reads, is Next Level and California. So you have Chris Bach and Corey Rogers out of Next Level Rowing, and Ben Davison and Soren Kosick out of California. The Next Level crew, I know that they've been involved in the beach, the coastal side of things, and the California crew, I know, has some experience at the senior team level with Ben Davison there, having competed in the men's 8 in Tokyo, is not a former Olympian, never former, never past, but a prior year Olympian there. Soren Kosick looking to qualify for his first Olympic Games. Believe, was it Kosick that raced this event at last year and became in 13th?
Yeah, this is a combination that's been the same from this year to last year. Again, speaking to just being able to put in these reps together and in a small boat, being able to gel, being able to trust each other. I'm sure a lot of the communication that's happening between these 2 athletes is just going down to grunts and single syllable words, because they're going out there full send. But yes, Ben Davison was in the men's 8 that placed 4th in Tokyo, but they both have come to these kinds of trials and have gone on to different qualification regattas in prior years. Ben was doing I think either the quad or the double for the 2016 final qualification regatta. Soren was in the 2021 final qualification regatta in the quad, but it's really neat to see these 2 athletes have such a long career and be able to find each other and find some pretty solid speed in the men's double.
You know, what we're seeing on the course right now, we do have a lead by Ben Davison and Soren Kosick there by about open water. Based on the speeds that were thrown down in the time trial the other day on Thursday, these boats both went down the time trial. The California crew here, who is out in front, is the duo that had the faster of the two times by actually quite a significant margin. But now that these boats are side by side, it's a smaller margin than what we saw out of the time trial. So you never know when you go down the time trial versus having the boat side by side in the lane next to you. Having that external carrot does give you a different sense of urgency than the time trial alone. Now, being involved in beach sprint, the next level athletes, the beach sprint is a shorter race. It's a much shorter, much more anaerobically dominant race. So that could also be some of what we're seeing here with the boat that is out in front, being used to those 2,000-meter races. Rowers train in the wintertime. We don't just do 2,000 meters. Rowers do 6,000 meters. Some athletes do 30 minutes or 60 minutes. So being used to putting in a lot of meters, going very hard over a long distance, is something that you spend a lot of time doing over years of time, so that really when it comes down to the brass tacks of the race itself, you want the race to feel short. You do not want it to feel long. So that to the benefit of these two athletes who are a little bit more accustomed to the longer race.
And looking back at some of the process over the year that gets these athletes here, I noticed erg time submitted by Chris Bach out of that next level crew, Ben and Soren. And these athletes are already pretty phenomenal. Seeing the times there that they're being able to throw down an indoor rowing machine is very impressive. They repeatedly have to do a lot of 6K testing, 2K being the distance that we are racing here on the water, just to see where they stack up in an objective measure. But things can change when you're out on the water. But Ben and Soren laying down some really solid early season 6K times and some very good performances in the single at the winter speed order, coming here together to put 2 and 2 together.
You know, that we spoke about Davison being in the men's 8, which means he was a sweeper at the last Olympic Games 2021 in Tokyo, which means, 1 oar per person. So being able to perform in multiple disciplines is to your benefit. There are 14 events at the Olympic Games, 7 for men, 7 for women. Some are sculling, some are sweeping, and if you can row both sides and scull, that gives you more opportunities to make teams. So from a young age, getting involved in sculling, it's a little more balanced. It's a great way, it's a great segue to sweep rowing. Sometimes athletes find it easier to switch from sculling to sweep because the basic mechanics are the same. The difference is you just hang a left or a right, depending on which side of the boat you're rowing when it comes to sweep rowing. Beautiful overhead shot there by the drone as we approach the closing quarter of the race here, staying very tidy, moving together, hands finishing in front. You don't see a ton of major body motion happening, meaning they're really focused on hanging off of the legs here. Now, at this point in the race, getting to the last 500 is when you would expect things, because you're the most fatigued at this point. If there are any technical idiosyncrasies, they would start to show up here at this point.
Yeah, but I think that these two athletes, even though they do have a good lead, they're racing the clock. So again, last year at the World Championships, they placed 13th, which was outside of the top 11. They needed to be able to secure a spot to Paris. We did not have a men's double in Tokyo. We did not have a men's double in Rio. We haven't not had an entry in this event since 2008, which was a CRC boat under different leadership. But these athletes are right there.
West and Elliott Heavy.
Yeah, but these athletes are right there. When they go to Lucerne for its final qualification regatta, whoever was winning this event, they're already poised to be in close to that top 2 spot.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Outside, having placed 13th, being out just 2 places outside of those top 11 that automatically qualify through the World Championships, and it's maybe they're hearing us talking about what it really takes, because as soon as we said that being just outside of it, you could see they took it up for the sprint. The beauty of this sport, more than any other sport that in my experience of 10 or 12 different sports, is the way that it drives you to be intrinsically motivated, and being out there like that with this type of lead to sprint and to come cleaner, be even cleaner as you cross that line, knowing that you now have the next job at hand.
And congratulations to these two, to Ben Davison and Soren Kosek, for winning the men's double here at the United States Olympic and Paralympic Team Trials rowing. completely gassed past the finish line. They left everything out there trying to see where they could stack up relatively, just as my napkin math tells me, as far as relative conditions and whatnot. It seems like that was a very good race, very good time for this combination. Next across the line, the next level team, Chris Bach and Corey Rogers, coming in second place here at the United States Olympic and Paralympic Team Trials. Be very exciting for both of those experienced athletes, Ben and Soren, the winners of this race, to go over to the final qualification regatta. Familiar with that setup, we see the white flag of that referee saying that the race is clean and good to go. And so it is, the win is taken by Ben Davison and Soren. They will, next steps for them, going to Lucerne. Both are very familiar with that, with Ben frequenting that regatta in 2016, Soren in 2021. But here they are, going to that qualification regatta together in the men's double, representing the United States.
I'm Lindsay Shoup, and I'm here with Kara Kohler, the winner of the women's single. There are so many things I want to ask you right now. Two things. What was a pivotal race moment, and what were you thinking when you crossed that line?
Ooh, pivotal race moment. Honestly, before the race. I feel like the lead up and not keeping the mind quiet, focusing on everything I've practiced, everything I can control, trying to push the doubts aside because, you know, those doubts are pretty loud when you come to these critical junctures of making the Olympic team or not. And so just trusting everything I've practiced in practice and the mental prep, and then just, you know, once you get to the start line, hope that, you know, the habits take over. Yeah.
How about when you cross?
And then crossing the finish line, right, yeah. Yeah, I visualized it many, many times these past couple weeks, and so to then have it happen and in real time is very special. And to have my family here, my mom, my niece, my sister on the bike path, hopping on a road bike for the first time, let her borrow my bike, so that was all very fun and a dream come true.
Well, fantastic. I mean, the next step for you is, you know, just the pending approval, and off we go, continuing to train, I imagine, and on your way to Paris. Congratulations. I'm looking forward to watching it. I've thoroughly enjoyed watching your career continue to develop, so best of luck. Yeah.
Sports brought to you by Making Teams, brought to you by Xfinity. Wonderful to be able to see and hear from Kara Kohler just then, the winner of the women's single here at the United States Olympic and Paralympic Team Trials. This is her second Olympics in this event, third Olympics overall. Very proud as somebody who trained and worked with Kara Kohler. I am beyond excited for what may be in her sights this summer. Next up here at the start line, we're looking at the starting bridge, getting ready for the men's lightweight double final. So we're 5 minutes out from that start time, so we are about to see how these crews pull into said starting block that we explained earlier, seeing a little bit of that Riverside crew coming on to screen here. But in this race, we have from lane 1 to lane 6 a crew from Riverside that'll pull into lane 1, another Riverside boat next to them in lane 2, lane 3, a United States Training Center Sarasota composite, in lane 4, New York Athletic Club composite, Texas in lane 5, and in lane 6, Riverside. All of these crews have only really seen each other in yesterday's semifinals. The only athletes who competed in an earlier winter speed order where we know roughly their speed were the Melvin and Tuckerman combination. They raced in singles. They were the two highest ranking lightweights in that winter speed order that happened on this course in mid-February, and they have come together as a combination to throw their hat in the ring for snagging a spot through that qualification regatta to then go to Paris. But something I expect to happen will be a very good fight between that crew, the Sam Melvin Cooper Tuckerman crew, and the Jimmy McCullough Zach Heese group, who were the 2023 lineup in this event. So they went to the 2023 World Championships, placed 19th, needed 7th in order to have a qualified spot to the Olympic Games, fell outside of that. But we look to have a very competitive field. Looking at all the field, the awards and the prestige of the different athletes in this event are fairly deep. There's Pan Am medalists in here. We've got former senior team members in either the light men's double, quad, or single. And I expect this one to be a very tight race. So now we see all these athletes are finally backing into the starting bridge, getting ready for their race. Start time at 9:15 in the men's lightweight double.
So you mentioned potentially tight race here, specifically the top 6 out of the time trial. There were 8 initial entries, and this happens to be one of the few races that we've had where the top 6 from the time trial did find their way to this morning's final. The closest times spread were between the McCullough and Heese duo with a time of 6:46.77, but out of the semifinals, but slightly faster than them was the NYAC composite of Tuckerman and Melvin, 6:45.59. I did that backwards to make it even harder for those of you out there to do the math, but it's just over a little bit over a second separating those two crews, which is a matter of feet. Divide these boats into thirds and then basically go, okay, one third of this boat is what separated them when they were in separate races yesterday in the semifinals, which we also brought to you here at Nathan Benderson Park in Sarasota, Florida. So today, when you are side by side, you never know what can happen, right? You have sometimes the time trial is all about staying internally focused. You don't have the external feedback of where am I relative to the other crews to know how you are doing. It's just you, the clock, your focus, your boat. But sometimes, the key of the focus is put distractors there and see if you can be focused. It's always you put someone on the foul line and they're shooting foul shots and everybody's sitting there quietly. Sometimes that can be more distracting than having all the motion. So practicing staying focused when things are going on and when nothing is going on is a skill that you hone in this sport. The more opportunities you have to sit at big start lines, the more opportunities you have to line up against fantastic competition day in and day out, the better, the more focused you can be. At the national team level, you rarely race. You are racing your teammates all the time, but you rarely have opportunities to sit at race courses, Olympic caliber spec race courses like this one at Nathan Benderson Park. And as I gab, this race is off. We have a start in the men's lightweight double final from left to right as the referee reads again. Riverside, Sarasota Composite, that's the USTC, U.S. Training Center Sarasota Composite, then the NYAC Composite, Texas, and another Riverside crew underway out on the course this morning. And it does look like, what is that, lane 4? Out of lane 4, it is the NYAC, Tuckerman and Melvin, who had the fastest time out of the semifinals yesterday, who has a quicker early lead. It almost looks like they're on nothing. It's a dark hole they're rowing.
Yeah, it's a bit hard to spot, but that is looking pretty speedy over there. They did have the fastest time in the time trial. They did have a faster time in their semi, but they haven't gone against these other crews. They haven't gone against Zach Heese and Jimmy McCullough, who are off to their right-hand side. So it'll be interesting to see how that unfolds. Parsons and Liu of Texas basis, holding on to some overlap on their left-hand side. Riverside also in a darker shell, hard to spot, but they are in the mix. That's Alex Twist and Sean Richardson of Riverside, and incorrectly said yesterday that they may have been related to a different Richardson in a sculling boat, but they are not. But a lot of these rowing things seem to happen in families
Family
and
ties.
passing the baton. And something I read about Sean as well is that he's really found a lot of mentorship with his doubles partner, Alex. They were in the Pan Am double together, and light double, and placed 4th in the Pan Ams.
You know, and as you see that white structure back there, it is out in front by a little bit of open water, so just about 3 seconds of a lead for Tuckerman and Melvin. That's Cooper Tuckerman and Sam Melvin out of the NYAC Composite crew. And then Jasper Liu and Tim Parsons there look to be in second, but it's very close between them and Zach Heason and Jimmy McCullough, flanking our current leaders out of the NYAC Composite. Again, one of the winners of the semifinals yesterday is Cooper Tuckerman and Sam Melvin. They had the fastest time in the time trial, fastest time in the semifinal, but this is a larger margin than what we were seeing. So again, let's keep an eye on late surges by other crews that are out on the field. And perhaps, you know, I know that I read a couple of these crews, might not be these guys in particular, but I know that I read something that I always love to hear is we still have 2 days of practice.
Yep.
Okay, you race a time trial on Thursday, now you have a day off, you still have a couple of practices to figure things out, and something I firmly believe is that your warm-up, it's another opportunity. You get 30, 45 or more minutes to go out and practice good strokes again. And the cool thing about our sport is some of those technical nuances, you can really find significant speed by making small technical adjustments that lead to aha moments. You grind away for the physique, for the physiology of it, and from one day to the next, it's that hope and it's that continual curiosity that allows you to keep finding a little bit more from a technical standpoint, see if that helps you out. And perhaps that's what we're seeing here, because this is a larger lead than what we've seen so far based on the trending speeds.
Yeah, things clicking together there for the Sam Melvin and Cooper Tuckerman boat over in lane 4, currently in first place with a little bit of gap between them and the next boats. That would be Zach Heese, Jimmy McCullough, Training Center Composite, and Tim Parsons and Jasper Liu of Texas. Actually, Jasper and Zach were in a combination in 2022, but then last year's USA entry was Zach and Jimmy. They were able to place 19th at that World Championships, here again in that combination. None of these crews have really raced each other in an entire year. Aside from Sam and Cooper, who are in a boat together at the speed order, a lot of them spent a majority of their year training together in either in their Pan Am group or in their different places like Riverside's, obviously, sending a good group of people, just trying to focus in on who's going to be the fastest in this lightweight men's double.
And you can see how quick of a clip they're rowing with there in terms of their stroke rate. They're certainly staying horizontal, doing the things that you want to see when it comes to the rowing at a stroke, but a stroke rate a little bit higher than some of the rates that we've seen so far, and it's helping them extend their lead. And, I should have said that they did have the fastest time in the time trial by about 6 seconds, but based on speed yesterday of what we saw, it looked like a much closer margin. But this is closer to that 6-second time trial lead, perhaps. Perhaps they just like to be alone.
Again, speaking to what
they're good at being internally motivated.
Yeah, and what we've seen in some of these other boat classes, when we have a field to race against, if you're farther enough ahead, you want to be consistent, you want to stick to your race plan, but if you're ahead of the field, you can respond, not react. And again, these guys have everything to gain here. They want to be able to make their first Olympic team. There are no Olympians in this group. That somebody wants to be able to fight for the opportunity to get that spot, because next steps in this boat class is to go on to Lucerne for the final qualification regatta and then see, can they get to Paris from there?
And once they get there, they come in top 2. You mentioned earlier we have not had an entry at the Olympic Games in this event since 2008, which it's been a few years, a few Olympic cycles since then.
Potentially. We'll have to we'll have to.
We'll do our math.
That might be true. I'm just thinking back, because we did have a light men's 4. Perhaps that's what I'm thinking of in Rio.
Yep, sorry, that was for the double.
In the light men's double, it's interesting with this boat class to be able to have it. Things change in the Olympic program a little bit.
I retract my statement, folks. That was the heavy double, the open double that we haven't had entry since 2008. This one we just didn't have it in the last Olympic cycle. Again,
absolutely.
14 events at the Olympic Games, but you must qualify. There are no guarantees. The United States actually for this previous so far has qualified 8 events for the Olympic Games, and with almost 9, which ties them for they are at third, almost tied them for second in terms of the nation with the most guaranteed entries so so far. We are in those last 250 meters of the race in terms of getting into the sprint, and this duo that got out in front, Cooper Tuckerman and Sam Melvin, who had the early lead and then stayed out in the lead, has continued to stay in front by open water, which means they are more than 3 seconds ahead of the next placed crew of Jimmy McCullough and Zach East in lane 3, who's putting on a late charge there in the other white hull. But it is the NYAC composite crew who had the fastest time in the time trial, then won their semifinal to make it here to the final, to come across with that buzzer first. You see the pats on the back, the handshakes happening, proud of one another, thankful for one another and the performance that they just laid down on the course, because this is their next step. The United States did not come in top 11 at last year's World Championships, so these two have punched a ticket to Lucerne, Switzerland in May 19th to 21st at that Olympic qualification regatta. In the words of John Wooden, though, take 24 hours to savor what you've just done and then get back to work, because there's still more speed to be had, still more to find. Every opportunity you get, every stroke that you take is a chance to find even just a little more speed. And even though this is a 2,000-meter race, 5 laps on a track as you would run it, sometimes races are won and lost by an inch or fewer. And that is why what we heard earlier, if you were watching in the broadcast, one of our PR2 mixed double athletes mentioned, go until you see that big orange buoy, because you want to be going as fast as possible when you surge past the finish line. Up next, the morning of racing will continue. The next race start time is due to start at 9:30. It will continue with the men's double. That's up here in just a little over 5 minutes is the next designated start time. In the men's pair, it's the men's pair final. 6 entries. Therefore, all 6 boats out of the time trial will race in the next race. 4 races left to go in this morning's program. We are coming to you live from Nathan Benderson Park in Sarasota, Florida. We are coming to you live on Peacock, NBCSports.com, and the NBC Sports app, all brought to you by NBC Sports, bringing you steps in the Olympic team qualification process with the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Team Trials rowing.
And I'm Grace Latz. I'm down here on the dock with the winners of the men's double here at the United States Olympic and Paralympic Team Trials. Fantastic race. How are you feeling?
I feel pretty good. A little tired, but yeah, pretty good.
Yeah. You've had a couple of moments here to just sit down, relax. It's actually really funny. Ben over here was just asking me about his time, because I did call correctly that you're racing the clock. What were you thinking during that race?
We're just trying to lay down a good time. I think that we have a really big race coming up next month, obviously, so this was just a good test and chance to race on the course and see how we do relative on the percentage.
Yeah, staying very process-minded, and obviously looking for a great outcome there in Lucerne. Next steps between now and then, what are you thinking about working on?
Definitely want to clean it up in the headwind. I think that was like a big point for us last year, and I think we're taking steps in the right direction. We've definitely been in the boat longer than last season, so yeah, I think everything's kind of tracking positively right now.
Yeah, combinations definitely coming together. You guys competed together last year. It'll be very exciting to follow your success in Lucerne. So thank you. Congratulations to the two of you. Go race hard. Up to you, Lindsay.
And we are back up to the start here at the starting line for the next race, the first of the final 4 races that we have coming to you live this morning on NBC Sports from Nathan Benderson Park in Sarasota, Florida. This is the pair, the men's pair. This is one of those events that the U.S. has qualified for the Olympic Games. So the winner of this event will be named to this year's Olympic team pending U.S. OPC approval. So the winner of this is a trials selected event. It is also a qualified event. But as we switch from doubles to pairs, we go from 2 oars per person to 1 oar per person. One person rows one side of the boat, one person rows the other side. And the thing that always throws people off is that because rowers face the opposite direction that they race, if you are actually sitting in the boat to a rower, starboard's off to the left side of the boat. And port is off to the right side of the boat. If you are turning the opposite direction, or you are a coxswain, or you are driving a motorized boat, the opposite is true. But here we are at the start. You can see a few little bumps on the course, but still a nice day. It is a beautiful temperature. April in Sarasota can be known to be warm. It is not even 70 degrees yet, so the temperature out there is helping these athletes perform well, which is fantastic. Not too many clouds to speak of, but a thin layer is also helping keep the temperature a little bit lower. It's exactly what you would want to see. It's a lovely day for racing down here in Sarasota, Florida. The men's pair, let me set the field again. 6 entries appeared here in Florida for the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Team Trials rowing. Started racing with a time trial on Thursday, and then that stacks them for, it was kind of a race for lanes. Where do we put them? Typically, the faster boats gravitate toward the center lanes, flanking them the boats with the not as fast times. But again, time trial. It's single file. It's not side by side. So anybody's game. Let's see what happens here. Left to right as the referee reads. In lane 1 is Tyler Nace and Alex Kowalski. Lane 2, Paul Marcy and Tom Pezic. Lane 3, Alexander Hedge and Ezra Carlson. Lane 4, Oliver Bubb and Billy Bender. Lane 5, Anders Weiss and Alex Richards. Lane 6, Gus Rodriguez and Sam Halbert.
I have to say, when I was reviewing my notes, trying to anticipate who's going to be in this race, and then saw who was entered for the time trials, I was very excited for this race. And why, would you ask?
Yes, I would like to know why, Grace. Tell me.
On my sheet here, I have some sort of senior, junior, or U23 experience. Most of them all have made some sort of senior team, have been to a qualification regatta before. This is a very experienced field. I would say the most out of any event.
And there are athletes on the field, on the water, right now on the water, in the boats, who I met when I first started training.
Yeah.
So, I'm a day or two older than you, and most of the people out here on the course, not that old. But it also speaks to the aerobic nature of our sport, that you can stay in this for a very long time. There are athletes that compete at the Olympic Games who are 19 years old in our sport. There are athletes who compete who are 40 plus in our sport, and they're all on the same level playing field with one another. And, it's anybody's game. Sometimes the 19-year-old wins, and sometimes the 40-year-old wins. Yeah. That's the nature of it.
Yeah, you do tend to see, well, this is an observation that may be anecdotal, but does seem to be that over the last 10 years or so, we're seeing a payoff in an older athlete who's got some years under their belt, that aerobic base that needs to be built. It is very interesting to see.
Technical dexterity. Once you figure it out, you never forget it. The nervous system does not forget. Yeah.
Especially in smaller boats, and being able to translate that fitness and that physical capacity to the dexterity and the technicality that needs to happen. You definitely need to execute that well in pairs, both the men's and women's pairs. So it'll be interesting to see what happens here.
And it looks like they are poised for the start. Sure are. You could see the athletes change their posture. All of a sudden, the attention was there. The boot goes down. We talked about the cup that holds the bow ball, the aligners, the volunteers that are holding the stern decks, and we are off. And it is very tight. Of course, it's going to be very tight at the very start, but there isn't a major jump to speak of. Maybe on these innermost lanes 5 and 6, the ones that will be closest to where all the spectators are. We have a great crowd down here supporting these athletes here this morning in Sarasota, Florida. So the quickest off of the start is the Anders Weiss, the 2-time Olympian in that crew. And then we also have another a Tokyo Olympian in there, as well as Alex Richards. They were the 3rd fastest in the time trial. They are rowing unaffiliated. 24 clubs represented here, 5 unaffiliated entries for the entire regatta. But here specifically, we're seeing one of those unaffiliated entries making it all the way here to the final. And right now, they are our leaders by a couple of feet.
Mm-hmm.
Few feet.
Maybe. I mean, Anders over there, who's been that two-time Olympian in 2016 and 2021, has the most experience on the field on the senior team level. So it was in the men's pair in 2016. So has gone through this kind of qualification process before. Has gone through a trials. Then it was qualified here. He'll have to take the next step to the qualification regatta. Or I'm sorry, no, this is a qualified
It's qualified.
event.
They came in
Pardon
5th
me.
last year at the
So
World Championships. Had to come in top 11. Came in 5th.
Same as his Rio trip with Naragragian. In 2021, he was 5th in the men's straight 4, but has been on the team 2016 through 2019.
That's a prolonged period of time. You
Yeah.
got some years under your belt, maybe a little bit of time out, and then step back into it. We've seen athletes do that. You take a moment away, and then you might even find more, because sometimes there is that sense of joy. They miss the routine. They miss it. They miss the joy that the sport can bring. And I can't tell you time and again, that was in my experience, when you find the joy, you find more speed that way. And that is not just words out of my mouth. Olympians time and again will say that shifting from relief to joy makes a huge difference, because when you're going through something this hard, decompressing in super positive ways with a positive environment around you, finding the joy in it, just helps you recover better, which helps you perform more and more and more. Progress and performance does not happen because of all the work. It happens because you work, rest, and recover.
Yeah.
That's where gains are seen. And right now, that tiny little few foot of a margin that we saw by that more experienced crew out of Anders Weiss and Alex Richards, still a couple of feet, but certainly hotly contested by their neighbors in lane 6,
Gus Rodriguez.
Thank you, and Sam Halbert, but also 2 lanes away, making a little sneaky move, sometimes having a boat between you. The farther someone is away, they can kind of play a little sneak attack. And no matter how far you are ahead, even if you're in the bow of the boat, the person that is the first one to cross the finish line, you can't see out of your periphery. It's kind of hard sometimes because you're so internally focused.
Yeah, I'm seeing a very good move being made here by Gus Rodriguez and Sam Halbert. They were both invited to the selection camp. It did not make the men's 8 or the men's straight 4. They were in that really competitive, tight group of athletes being selected for those team boat events. So they've perhaps put in some time together via selection, but they look to be about dead level with Weiss and Richards. Next to them, Hedge and Ezra from Green Racing Project, the Pan Am pair, gold medalists there, silver medalists there. Very, very strong. Oh, it was gold.
It was gold.
So they want to keep that combination together, and for good reason. They look to be only a few feet behind the now leaders, Gus Rodriguez and Sam Halbert.
So slightly different race plan there by those two. They were the ones that had the second fastest time in the time trial, so they weren't a quick start necessarily over there. The Green Racing Project duo that did place first in the pair at the 2023 Pan Am Games, Alex Hedge, Ezra Carlson, 2 lanes away over there. So putting on a little sneak attack here in that middle 1,000 of the race, which, that's not a bad plan to have. That shows your aerobic capacity kind of coming through. And the thing is I'm talking about that sneak attack that they're making, but they're also bringing along Bub and Bender as well, who have experience from prior teams. Was it Oliver Bubb, who was in the men's 8, who was just outside by a very small margin for qualifying the men's 8 for the Olympic Games at last year's World Championships. So Oliver Bubb was in that men's 8 that was just there. So knows tight racing, knows high stakes racing, and we're starting to see maybe some of that experience come into play right now as this race unfolds.
It's actually
the straight line across. Where's the line?
Right, it's hard to tell, but it does look like we have an early lead between Bender and Bub. It was Bender who was in the men's pair who was able to secure this for the United States, so that's why it is a qualified event. So the winner of this event will go on to represent Team USA in the Olympics pending USOPC approval. But it does look to be a very, very strong push out of lane 4, Bub and Bender out of California.
And there's a clearer line straight across. That was a great third 500 by those two. And they were the ones that mentioned that they still have 2 days of practice to work on things. I knew that I saw it somewhere, and the 2 that are out in front right now are the 2 that made that comment after Thursday's time trial, and maybe they did find some things through practice that is helping them right now, knowing exactly what's on the line, which is not a step to the Olympic qualifying regatta. This is the step onto the team, because this is a qualified event for the United States. Whomever comes across first, pending USOPC approval, has 2 tickets punched to Paris for the July-August Olympic Games.
And these two Dartmouth men are looking to try to secure that spot. Again, it's still Oliver Bubb and Billy Bender in the lead of this men's pair race. So again, this is the trials. Ezra and Hedge over there in the green off to the right-hand side are trying to make a push into that very good sprint here by Gus Rodriguez and Sam Halbert as they come into the red buoys of the last 250 meters. We can see the uptick in the rate and pace for the Bubb and Bender crew. They look to have been pouring on the sauce here. They want to get to that finish line ASAP. They are about 10-15 strokes away from that line. You can see it. They are elated. You can see it in their body language. They want it, and they want it bad. So they are about to cross that line. Ezra and Hedge are about trying to close it in, trying to throw on. Can we do something in these last 10-15 strokes to be able to get it? Looks like their bow ball is moving. Bubb and Bender, though, trying to keep calm, cool, and collected. And as we hear that first place, it is Bubb and Bender from California who have won the men's pair here at the United States Olympic and Paralympic Team Trials. Second there was the Hedge and Carlson, just a boat length, just a little bit behind there, snagging the second place. Third place, Gus Rodriguez and Sam Halbert of the U.S. Training Sarasota composite. But it is Oliver Bubb and Billy Bender who are going to Paris. Congratulations to those two. They are going to Paris. Very exciting for these two men. You can see just the congratulations being exchanged across the different shells here in this final here at the United States Olympic and Paralympic Team Trials.
I'm Lindsay Shoup, and I'm standing here with the winners of the light men's double here. Please first introduce yourselves, and then I want to know what you guys were thinking at the start line and maybe a pivotal moment in the race. What happened out there?
Yeah, I'm Cooper Tuckerman, and I row for Craftsbury up in Vermont. During the race, I think we went into it just knowing that if we go out there and execute sort of our best piece, that we just got to trust in that and that would get the job done.
Right on. And
Sam Melvin. You're really, our whole mentality is you're really only as good as the training you've done. So really the work that was done to win this race wasn't today. Our only job today was just to go out there and execute exactly what we've been training to do. And that'll get us where we'll get at.
And how long have you guys been able to row together?
We've been rowing together. We first hopped in the double right after the fall speed order this fall. So that was last week in November, and then we sort of hopped in the double and have been basically rowing it together since then.
Okay. And what does the rest of the day and then your time leading up to the Olympic qualification regatta look like?
Yeah, well, today I think obviously we'll take a little bit of a breather, but yeah, pretty soon we're going to get right back to it. This is just the first of 2 steps to qualify this boat for the Olympics, so this is really just a stepping stone for us. But yeah, we're going to make every session count from here on out. Got 6 weeks.
Right on. Congratulations again. I'll let you go cool down and begin the rest of the process for the next step. Good luck.
Thank you.
And that's making the team here. Coming to you live, NBC Sports, seeing how the rowing team will be stacking up for the Paris Olympic and Paralympic Games here. That's watching the trials. These are the trials boats. Then Lindsay was speaking with the men's lightweight double. Those winners, Sam Melvin, Cooper Tuckerman, being able next steps to go to Lucerne for the final qualification regatta to see if they can snag a top 2 spot to make it to Paris. Next up, an event near and dear to my heart, the women's pair. So in this race, we have a depth of experience. Over in lane 1, we have Tracy Iser and Megan Calmo of New York Athletic Club. In lane 2, Alina Hagstrom and Ali Rusher, a composite boat out of Sarasota. In lane 3, we have Hannah Painter and Hannah Hedefeld. In lane 3, we have Jess Thonis and Aja Shakowski, another training center composite boat. Lane 5, Issa Darvin and Caitlin Kynatz out of California. And lane 6, Erin Relick and Emily Froelich, another U.S. Training Center Sarasota composite. A lot of these women had been in the mix for the women's 8 and the women's straight 4 group, and had been competing. I think almost just about every single one of these had competed at the earlier winter speed order, but in different combinations. So these athletes have not been together very long. The only consistent combination between the winter speed order held mid-February and now is the Iser Kalmo crew over in lane 1. Fastest time coming into this final was Jess Thonis and Aja Tchaikovsky, who posted a 7:01 time. Next fastest crew as far as the time trial goes was then going to be the crew next to them in lane 3, the Orion crew of Hannah Paintner and Hannah Hedefeld. A couple seconds behind, but it's very hard to tell what can happen between a time trials and a side-by-side racing. These athletes have had 2 days of rest between that time trial and today's final. This is a qualified event. The winner of this race will be able to get that bid to go to the Olympic Games.
And it's exciting, collegiate racing in the United States. On the women's side, it became an NCAA sport in 1996, first national NCAA championships in 1997. So seeing the growth of women's sweep rowing in particular over the last, 20 plus years is certainly in large part to that, seeing a wider spread of athletes coming from different schools, which is really compelling in terms of the influence of sweep rowing in college to sweep rowing here. But also what's really cool is that as of the last Olympic Games, those 14 events between men and women became balanced, 7 and 7. Rather than being 8 and 6, it became 7 and 7. So we have the women's pair is an Olympic class event, the women's straight 4, which is basically like a giant pair that goes really fast.
I love that boat.
It's fantastic. Is an Olympic class event now. As of it was in the 90s and then disappeared for a while and came back as of the last games. So now that is a balance there. And then of course we have the women's 8. So there are technically, from a sweep standpoint, help me do the math, 14 spots, 8, 4, and 2, 14 spots, 7 on the starboard side, 7 on the port side. So again, the more disciplines you own, if you can own 2 sides of the boat and you can scull, more seats to sit in each of these boats. Something these athletes often train in pairs to make bigger boats too, because it's just you and your partner. You got to match, you got to move the thing, and then come together in a bigger boat. I know when we trained for the Olympic Games, we were training in pairs. As soon as we found out we made the 8, first thing we did was hop back into pairs.
Yep, absolutely. A lot of the training, a lot of the miles happen in the pair, especially on the women's sweep side. It does translate well to sculling in some boats, but it's the smallest boat you can be in for sweep. So sweep meaning that it's 1 oar per athlete, one either side of the boat. Port and starboard. So you can see that here. Most of them tend to be port strokes, not all, but some. So that is the nature of this type of event. The pair, very difficult to do right. But when you get it and it goes well and you've got a good combination, man, does it feel like things fly.
So I'm mentioning earlier Aja Tchaikovsky, who's in that lane 4 with her partner Jess Thones there, is just 1 year out of school. NCAA champion with Stanford, just a kind human, honestly.
Yeah.
But just having 1 year of training experience under their belt to be here, is in the crew that actually had the fastest time out of the time trial by about 4 seconds, which is a little over a boat length. But crews 2, 3, and 4 were only about a second and a half apart, which means there could be a lot of tight racing, especially in the mid-pack. Expect this to be very, very tight. A trip to Paris on the line. 2 tickets to Paris on the line pending U.S. OPC approval at the conclusion of this event, due to start at 9:45 as I'm staring at the 9 on the clock, 9:45 a.m. So will the side-by-side action change things from the time trial? Let's reset the field. And then I'm going to stop talking and give it back to Grace, because she's got some wonderful things to say. Lane 1, Tracy Iser and Megan Kalmo. Lane 2, Alina Hagstrom and Ali Rusher. Lane 3, Hannah Painter and Hannah Heideveld. Lane 4, Jess Thones and Aja Tchaikovsky. Lane 5, Issa Darvin and Caitlin Canast, also out of Stanford. Lane 6, Aaron Relick and Aaron Froelich.
Very good. Early start there out of Aaron.
Aaron
Relick and
Emily
Froelich. Yes. I ran into Erin, somebody I overlapped with in my training time in the lobby earlier, and she was just looking back to get into things. She actually came back out of retirement for this event. She's been only really training for just under a year, came back from her time in London, went to Oxford, fighting to be on the Olympic team with her sister Kelsey. Her older sister also went to Princeton. Kelsey has been named to the women's group that's doing the women's 8 or straight 4. But both Erin and Emily, great experience at the senior team level, have medaled in a number of events there, but it does look like we've got an early lead happening maybe with a new boat now.
The two Hannah.
Yeah, right.
Early lead. We saw that in some of the other crews, different race plans unfolding as the strokes were taken down the course. Quick starters and then quick mid. I imagine with the experience out of the lane 4 Tokyo Olympian Jess Thones that there's some composure there as well on race day. A little bit of quickness, but now as they lengthen out that quick start with the higher rate out of the crew, out of Orion, already being kind of taken back. It was a little bit of a slingshot action, and the crew out of the USTC Sarasota just went claw into bow. I'm stopping you there. So more strokes being taken, very tight action happening there in the center of the course. It's almost 2 boats, 2 boats, 2 boats. So races across the board right now that you are seeing in this final of the women's pair at the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Trials rowing.
Trying to make a spot for Paris, and it is that Hannah and Hannah who seem to be very close, but it goes back and forth there between Jess and Aja. Very, very challenging race, but Hannah Paintner, was got gold in the women's pair at the Pan Am Games with Issa Darvin in a boat over, but she's bringing that experience here. She competed in the speed orders as a single, and now she's here and as a pair.
And that's the nature of things. Throughout the season, athletes have opportunities to mix lineups, row with different partners, and that sort of thing. So early in the season, you might find speed with one person. Someone might find more physical speed. They might find more technical speed, and then the cream sort of rises to the top, so to speak. Or sometimes you just find a partner that you click with in particular better than others, and then you find time to kind of stick with them and kind of feel it out and hone your skills together. Similar styles tend to lend themselves. And here we go. That initial quick speed out of the crew from Orion, now overtaken by USTC Sarasota, the fastest finishers from the time trial, Jess Thones and Aja Tchaikovsky. These two athletes were in the running for the camp selected crew, and here they are in the pair instead of being with that group with the 8 and the straight 4, looking to find a way to Paris to improve upon the United States result from last year. Had to place top 11 in this event to qualify the boat for the Olympic Games by placing 6th in the women's pair at last year's World Championships. The boat was qualified, but we have the boat. The question is, who's going to sit in it? And right now, Jess Thones and Aja Tchaikovsky are those two people that are extending their lead, setting themselves apart because they want their butts in those seats.
Absolutely. Jess has had experience doing well in the women's pair event. She actually won the speed order in 2023 in the women's pair, so bringing together that experience. And you were talking about who was qualifying the boat last year to be able to have the U.S. have a spot in the Olympics this year. Allie Rusher was able to do that. She's over in lane 2 now, rowing with Alina Hagstrom. She was the one creating that opportunity for everyone here on the field, placing 6th at last year's World Championships.
You know, a big piece of what the United States is working on right now is pipelines, pathways, ways to get to the team, and hearing athletes come out of clubs that are kind of feeder clubs for kind of the hub centers, but also athletes coming up through the U19 and U23, that's under 19 and under 23 systems. Anyone out there interested or know anyone interested, go to the U.S. Rowing website and look for pathway, or even Google pathways, Google under 23, Google U19 rowing specifically, and that will help you sort out how to find your way toward national team pipelines. If you don't know rowing, Google your college's rowing team. If you are in college, Google your area. Go and find a club. Go to U.S. Rowing. I know that there's a new club finder opportunity out there. Find a club in your area. Search by area. But back to the task at hand, U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Team Trials rowing. Larger lead than the speed that we saw out of the time trial. So those 2 days of practice, just like we heard from Bub and Bender, allow you to find more speed. So does side-by-side action, because this is greater than 9 seconds currently, even though there's an angle of lead for these two right now.
Yeah, the women's sweep side is very competitive, very high percentages of competitive standard time. So again, that's something that we use to be able to gauge our relative speed against other crews. A lot of these women in this event are competing against their times of other events to be able to do that. So they might be closing in on that CST of 6:49.
And here we are, last 500 meters here, less than 2 minutes to go in this event without any significant wind to speak of, without a significant headwind to speak of. It would take less than 2 minutes to cover 500 meters for athletes like this that are this strong and experienced in sweep rowing. So as they look with this vantage point, you can kind of not sit back because you can never be far enough ahead in any race sport. We just have the opportunity to look behind us so we can actually see at all times just where we are relative to the field when we are the crew in front. So again, lane 4, USTC Sarasota, Jess Thones and Aja Tchaikovsky still out in front. They were down initially off of the start, but not by very much, and certainly didn't let it go for very long.
No, and it's interesting to see them going down the course here. Jess was a walk-on at Washington. Aja was Stanford. She rowed at Stanford. She was a medalist at the NCAAs, and got into rowing because both her parents rowed. Her father at Navy, her mother at Georgetown. Interesting to be able to add this rowing repertoire to that family mix, and it does look to be that Jess Thonis and Aja are in the lead here in the red buoys of this sprint of the women's pair. Again, this event is qualified for the Olympic Games. They are charging towards that line, trying to punch their ticket to Paris, and they are still in lead. Very good push there off to the side. Off to their right-hand side, we've got Hannah and Hannah, Ali and Alina. They're trying to make a run for it, but Jess and Aja have a sizable lead here at this point. I can see them here from the finish tower, probably about 10, 15 strokes to go. They're looking to pour everything out of the can here, trying to keep it clean, keep it calm, trying to push as hard as they can towards the line here. Taking a peek out, checking out where that finish line is. Wait until that bell goes. And there you have it. Just slapping the water out of elation. Great, good finish there by Erin and Emily over with Hannah and Hannah. But it is Jess and Aja who will be representing the United States at the Olympics in Paris, pending USOPC approval. Fully gassed there. I can see from the finish tower, the bow woman laying flat, laid everything out. That's all you can ask for in a race like this. A headwind. It was earlier this morning, so times being relative, we have no world records in rowing, only world best times, given these kinds of changing conditions. But congratulations to Jess and Aja.
I'm Lindsay Shoup, and I'm here with the winners of the men's pair from the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Trials rowing. Guys, introduce yourself first so the world knows who you are, and then I'll ask you a couple questions.
Oliver Bob.
Billy Bender.
And where do you guys go to school, or went to school?
I went to Dartmouth.
I'm still going to Dartmouth.
All right. As you can see, still in school and just graduated. Question: do you have pre-race rituals? How do you manage the high-stakes racing? Like, what helps you get into that zone?
Just walk through the race plan for me is like the biggest thing, and know that there are a lot of things I can control, and there's going to be some things I can't. But focusing on what I can control helps me, to stay level-headed, I think.
Right on.
Nothing special. Just get caffeine, painkillers, get your warm-up in. Just try to stay calm. Nothing crazy.
Having a partner that manages all of the other things for you might help a little bit. Pre-race meal.
I think just like a thing of coffee and then a Celsius. So.
All right. So how about an easier question? Do you remember what you were thinking when you crossed the finish line today, knowing that you've just punched 2 tickets to Paris pending approval?
I wasn't thinking much. I was just thinking, like, get the blade in and get it out and try to do it again.
Yeah, I mean, you have a length lead going to last 250. Just don't screw it up. Just keep doing the same things. Just, yeah.
Right on. Well, congratulations once again, and I'll let you hop back to your cool down and get ready for the next steps, which for you all is keep getting ready for the Olympics. Yep, right on.
And that's how you make the Olympic team, folks. So we're looking at the Bub and Bender combination winners of the men's pair. Pending USOPC approval, will be going to Paris for the Olympic Games. Congratulations to those two. Next up is the men's quad final. We have 3 boats in this race. Start time set for 10 a.m. Over in lane 1, we have a Sarasota Training Center composite. In lane 2, another Sarasota composite. We'll go into a little bit of a story there. And then lane 3, in the boat that will be nearest to us on screen will be a quad out of California Rowing Club. I'm Grace Latz. I am a 2016 Olympian in the quad event, so very excited to see the next 2 events unfold, the men's quad final and the women's quad final, coming up at 10:15 for the women's quad, 10 for the men's quad, both 3 entries each. Both only have 1 winner that gets to go to the qualification regatta in Lucerne to then try to make a run for the Olympic Games. Here in the men's quad, the U.S. has not had an entry in the men's quad in Tokyo, was not in Rio. We haven't had a men's quad in the Olympics since 2008, where we placed 13th. But this crew seems to be pretty good. I was looking at how the combination did last year. So it's the same lineup out of that first training center quad. The Williams crew in lane 2, that is the same combination that went to the World Championships last year. And they finished 9th out of that entire field. They needed to place 7th in order to qualify the United States to have a spot in the Olympics. They fell just outside of that. But there's only 2 spots that can, out of the final qualification regatta, that next step piece that we've been alluding to, only top 2 of that regatta go on to the Olympics, but they are poised to be very competitive at that race, since if we took last year's results, they are in that top 2 positions. They are favored in that race, but it's looked to be highly subscribed.
Well, you said 2008 was the last time that we had a quad. Interestingly enough, the quad that raced in 2008, the Polish men's quad lost 0 races that entire Olympic cycle, except to the United States men's quad in Lucerne, Switzerland. That was the only loss that handed. So it was a very good quad that went into the Olympics that year. So looking to find more speed, I would call the margin between 2 of these crews out of the time trial a blink.
Absolutely.
A blink, 0.11, a blink. So there is certainly some in-house sibling rivalry happening here, I believe. And we'll see. It's not Spy Hunter. If you remember that video game, you can't throw oil slicks in the other lane, no spiky tires. There was absolutely 0 that you can do to the team next to you, to the boat next to you, except row your best race.
It's all about what can you keep within your control. What can you do with what you can control? And so what's interesting here, so we have the combination that was the 2023 lineup representing the U.S. That is in the middle of the field there. And we also see another Sarasota composite full of very well-decorated athletes. A lot of them had invites to the selection camp for the larger team boats for the men's 8 and the men's straight 4. And then our what's within your control. Let's figure it out. We're fit. We're cool. Let's see what we can do. So they've come together as a quad to try to challenge last year's lineup.
And that, again, speaks to having more disciplines, row port, row starboard, scull. It gives you more opportunities, more seats in boats. And here they are performing with a potential, opportunity to go to the Olympic qualification qualification regatta in Lucerne, Switzerland in May 19th to 21st. So just over a month, about a month and a half left to go. Quads are so fun to watch off the start because they are so quick. 4 people, 8 blades, no coxswain. They cover a lot of ground very, very quickly. Not quite as fast as an 8, but pound for pound, they are very, very fast. So all 3 of these boats very fast off of the start, staying close at least, in the beginning of this. That's that center, the center lane coming out of the time trial with the fastest time by that blink is the Williams Sarasota Composite, the U.S. Training Center Sarasota location composite crew there with just a couple of feet. That's a great shot there by the car along the wave attenuator there, just to give you that line across those buoys that give you that straight to show you just how close it is as they cross 250 meters. Those yellow and black bumblebee colored placards on the opposite side designate every 250 and every 500 meters down the race course, and you can see that center crew already looks like they've sub-lengthened. They've lengthened out off of their initial start sequence. So those very, very high strokes, then they take a slight step to lengthen out a bit to some also high but not quite as high strokes, because you don't want to jump off of the cliff. You want to go just little by a little. There is more race happening on the inside of the course, but this is exactly what we expected to see. Grace, what are you pointing at?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I was looking at the bow balls here, and it does look to be very technical, very clean rowing out of the center crew here. Dom Williams stroking that boat, went to Penn. Then we have William Legenzowski and Liam Galloway. Those two go way back. They sculled in high school together, junior men's quad at Youth Nats. Kevin Cardno, bowman of that boat, learned to row Alabama Huntsville, spent a lot of time in the men's single at that club, and is able to bring it here. He's been to the final qualification regatta in a quad before, so in the double. So bringing together that experience and that technical aspect is going to be really interesting. It is a slight head, so I was curious if that affected the time trial that we were seeing, because the dudes that are in the other quad over there, the other Sarasota composite boat, they're a little bit taller, a little bit bigger. And sometimes when you have the technical aspect thrown into it,
being a little bit bigger can help sometimes in a headwind. It is an east-northeast wind that we're seeing this morning. It's not major wind that you're seeing. You can see that the water is not superbly disrupted or anything like that, but it is an outdoor sport, so you get a little puff against your back. It actually helps stabilize the boat a little bit if one of these crews is a little bit shakier, but at this level we're looking toward Olympic qualification, so I can imagine that there's only so much shakiness happening. There are athletes also in the LaRue Sarasota USTC Sarasota Composite who sculled in high school as well. It's so funny seeing these names just reappear, stay in it. They scull in high school, sweep at the collegiate level, and come back to both things following college. But having those disciplines under your belt improves both. There's plenty of similarity between sweeping and sculling, and you get better at both by doing both. About a half a length now as we cross the next 500 for that early leader USTC composite, with Dom Williams stroking that boat. I say a half, and it's more like a quarter. Bow ball to the bow seat between the two boats. That's more than a blink, but as far as the fact that there is still a lot of racing left to be had, half of a race left, you would still only call it a blink. A lot of pressure happening. Imagine pushing yourself as hard as possible and having someone tap on your shoulder constantly and go, I'm still here, I'm still here, I'm still here.
Yep.
And yet trying to keep yourself and your crew focused.
The quad is an incredibly technical boat, and things happen very quickly. Stroke rates are higher. Things move very quickly, and moving quickly, it looks to be that Sarasota composite boat that's on the far side of the screen. I can see the bowman, Andy LaRue, kind of moving in somewhere between the stroke seat and the 3 seat of the lead crew at the moment. So we've in that far quad, we've got Andy LaRue in bow seat, Michael Knippen in 2 seat, 3 seat, Michael Clower, and Andrew Gard stroking that boat.
Yeah, I saw the bowman here in the near boat, the Williams USTC Sarasota composite peak just to the right just for a moment, because they're probably the ones calling where you are in the race, and it was right as they peaked that it was maybe a couple of more inches, maybe a foot that they got, but then as soon as a few more strokes were taken, there was an answer there. So both of these crews really just holding each other's speed right now. So a little bit of a lead that was taken off of the start, maybe extended by just a few more feet through the second 500. In the third 500, though, it hasn't really changed much, if at all. Maybe a few inches, depending on what a line of sight you are using here, but maintaining speed through that third 500 is what you would want to see out of a crew, out of yourself, out of your teammates, and both of these boats did it. It was that first 1,000 actually that made a little bit of a distinction. I see a smile on your face, Grace.
Oh,
what do you got?
Yeah, my hands are getting sweaty. I'm so excited for the end of this race because sprints can happen very quickly in a pod. When you pick up speed and you're in that flow, it feels like you're flying. Your body's on fire. But you feel like you're flying. And
boat lifts up.
The boat lifts up. You can just cruise. And I know both of these crews have a ton of power in them. Looking at erg submissions over the past year, there is a ton of power in both of these quads.
And, you know, speaking of picking up speed, the quad itself, because it is a quad, because there's no coxswain, because it's 4 people, but you still have 8 oars, that is that crew that the boat can pick up speed and change trajectory very, very quickly. And right now it looks like the far side crew, the Sarasota composite, that's kind of that outside, almost wild card, but not wild card, it made the early surge. They made the early surge on the other group, but it's still, they're holding them off. The call was answered by the Williams-stroked Sarasota boat, and that's the blink, folks. The blink apparently unfolded in the last 250 meters of the race, so maybe there was a little taken early on in the race, but that tiny little margin that we saw in the time trial is going to come down to the same margin that has been held by the Dom Williams stroked USTC composite Sarasota boat that maintained that same lead. They got a few inches, maybe the deck in the beginning of the race, half a deck in the first 500, half a deck in the second 500, and then through the second 1,000 of the race, there was very little change in that margin. Early surge by the far side crew in lane 1, which is the LaRue combination, but just short of claiming the #1 spot here at the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Trials rowing. The second of our final 2 races out of 10. That was the second of our final 2 races of the morning here. Certainly the biggest boat that we've seen. That is the fastest boat that you will see this morning on the water right now. Those 3 crews, congratulate them if you see anyone that raced in that race. Fantastic racing by all this morning. But it was the Williams composite crew that came across in first with a chance to go to the Olympic qualification regatta.
All right, I'm Grace Latz down here with the winners of the women's pair. They have their tickets to Paris. I've got Jess and Aja here. How are you feeling? What's going through your mind right now?
This is everything that we could have asked for. It's really exciting.
Yeah, absolute best case scenario.
Yeah. At what point in the race did you know things were going your way?
When the buzzer finished. It's never over until you're done. So, we had a really strong field. I think everybody showed up to play all the time. And I think we just were really able to capitalize on execution. Aja ran a perfect race. She did so good. And today was just our day to execute.
Yeah, we got a depth of experience here, two times the charm, but first time for you. What are your thoughts?
Well, Jess is just the best person that I could have been doing this with. I think I showed up to the training center after graduating college last year, and she was just one of the first people to bring me in and make me feel welcome and make the Princeton Training Center and Team USA something that I was so excited to be a part of. And she leads by example, and I'm so excited to be literally following her in the boat right now.
And following all the way to Paris, it will be pending USOPC approval. Congratulations to the both of you.
We are live with NBC Sports from Nathan Benderson Park in Sarasota, Florida, bringing you the last race of this morning's program for the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Team Trials in rowing. 10 events contested this morning. 3 boat classes punched their tickets to Paris. The remaining classes will have to go to the final Olympic and Paralympic qualification regatta held in May in Sarasota, in Lucerne, Switzerland, May 19th to 21st. But those 2 folks that you just saw there on the docks, those are the winners of the women's pair. Something that athletes may not realize, there are a breadth of ages here, and that was a Tokyo veteran Olympian, Jess Thones, with a 1 year out of college NCAA champion, Aja Zhikowski there. The veterans passing down the skill to the newcomers, blending the years, keeping the eras together, and really just circling back, bringing the good, right? You know, as you saw the smiles on their faces, you saw the little quick wave there by Jess Thones. So those 2 have, pending USOPC approval, punched tickets to Paris. Now what's the task at hand? Savor it for 24 hours and get back to work, because there's still more speed out there, always just a little more even if it's just rest a little better, eat a little better, hydrate a little better, smile a little more, and you can find an inch. And sometimes an inch is the difference between first and everyone else. Back up to the start for the women's quad. This is the final of the women's quad and the final race of the morning. After this race, please stick around. We are going to recap this morning's racing as well as have a few final interviews with the athletes. We want to hear from them, and we know that you do too, straight from their mouths. On the field right now up at the start bridge, 3 boats. 3 boats entered. 3 boats did a time trial on Thursday, raced for lanes to see where they would fall today in the official final. In lane 1, left to right as the referee reads, that's the far shore, is the Orion Composite crew with Sarah Busey, Karina Feitner, Veronica Nicasio, and Savannah Brija. Apologize for names, folks. We're doing the best we can up here. Please let us know. In lane 2, UST Training Center, Sarasota Composite, Lauren O'Connor, Teal Cohen, Emily Delleman, and Grace Joyce. In lane 3, another Orion Composite. Orion is certainly a club program that has become a strong feeder system for the U.S. national team over the last couple of years. That boat, Catherine Flynn, Charlotte Foreman, Lauren Miller, and Julia Batson about to take off in the final of the women's quad. Coming out of the time trials Thursday, time trials on Thursday. The margins when you race a time trial sometimes play out and sometimes they don't. You know, it has to do with the athletes. Sometimes if conditions are one or the other, certain boats are better in certain types of conditions than others. But I have to almost eat my own words here and say at the Olympic level, you need to be good in all types of conditions. Get more strokes under your belt in all types of conditions. Be ready for anything, because on race day, it doesn't have to be flat. It just has to be equally whatever it is for everyone, equally flat or equally as terrible for everybody.
Yeah.
We don't have dead flat, but we don't have anything bad going on here today. We've had a wonderful weekend of racing weather for these athletes in Sarasota, Florida at Nathan Benderson Park. Not too windy, not too hot. It's been just no rain, no storms coming through, maybe some planes, but other than that, it's been a lovely weekend for this. It's like Mother Nature said, oh, Olympic and Paralympic trials, let's help you out here. Thank you to everyone that is out there spectating, watching the looks on these young athletes' faces. You know, hopefully you can internalize some of that and share your joy and build off of their joy as well, because this is a big deal. We're talking about the Olympics and Paralympics.
It's a big deal.
Taking steps toward those teams. Let me go back to the margins for the time trials the other day. The margins that we did see were significant margins in rowing. You know, a boat length in basically every boat class, even though the boats are different lengths overall. You know, a single is 20 some odd feet long, an 8 is just under 60 feet long. Margins, the amount of time that a boat length is, because the boats travel different speeds, it's right around, give or take, 3-ish seconds per boat length of time that you see. So whenever you see a boat with overlap, it's most likely less than 3 seconds of a margin. Overlap being, if you look perpendicular to the course, you'll see that you can't see space. There's no empty space between crews. Once you start to see open water, that's clear water, that is space between crews when you look perpendicular to the course, that's when you know that you probably have 3 or more seconds between crews. So sitting up there at the start line, I know the things that would go through my head sitting up there, Grace, especially when you have time. This race is set to go at 10:15 a.m. We have yet to see a race start early, so we will most likely wait another minute or two before this race gets rolling, unless the referees and athletes decide otherwise. But you just sit there calmly. I can't tell. It's hard to tell, but the boot has risen, I believe, which means that they are set at least there. Normally they'll say something like arming system. It's very quiet, right? And the referees and the judges up in the start bridge operate that. Arming system armed, something like that once it is, and then they'll pull the crews.
They're locked and ready, crosshairs on that finish line.
And the volunteers are holding the stern, boats aligned. And then there's a stoplight system. We haven't talked about that. There's a red light up there, so they get a horn and audible cue and a visual cue that's dead in their lane. It's not a flag just to the middle. Every boat gets one right off of the tail, the stern deck there, to be able to see.
And they are off in the start of the women's quad here at the United States Olympic and Paralympic Team Trials rowing. Again, with that starting sequence, again, this is an event near and dear to my heart. The women's quad is something I raced at the 2016 Olympics. When you are doing this sort of starting sequence in a team boat, the stroke seat's the one looking at that light. And then you're trying to figure out timing with your crew. Time spent together really pays off to be able to minimize that reaction time, to just optimize, get as fast and quick off the line as possible. So I know that in that center quad, Lauren O'Connor and Grace Joyce have rowed together in the quad in 2023. They placed 11th at the World Championships. The USA needed to get in that top 7. They fell outside of that, but they're in striking distance. If whoever makes it out of this trials goes to the final qualification regatta, needs top 2 in order to advance to the Olympics.
And you never know what happens. You have a year of time to sort out athletes. You have, a year of time to sort out technical adjustments. So a lot of things can happen in terms of speed from last year to this year. The interesting thing about having to go to the Olympic and Paralympic qualification regatta is that happens in May, the end of May in Switzerland. And then the Olympics happens in late July and early August. Which means you have to peak for this race, make sure that you go through this race. And then you have to peak for the qualification regatta. And then it's almost like a wild card chance, right? So then to be able to peak multiple times, knowing that there's a lot on the line for 3 races, this one, the qualification, and the Olympic Games, that takes a lot of really intelligent training, a lot of intelligent planning upon the coaches and support staff parts, all the moving parts beyond the athletes to support the athletes so that they can perform in all of these different capacities at all of these high stakes regattas. To the task at hand this morning, 10:15, last race of the day, the final of the women's quad here, to find out which boat is going to go to that Olympic qualification regatta to potentially represent the United States at the Olympic Games. Current leaders, that center crew, that blue hull with the white stripe on the top, is the U.S. Training Center Sarasota composite, stroked by Lauren O'Connor.
Yeah, Lauren O'Connor over there. Actually, everyone in this crew most everyone's from a different club. So Lauren O'Connor representing Orion, Teal Cohen of the U.S. Training Center Sarasota, Emily Delleman of Green Racing Project, along with her teammate Grace Joyce, also out of the Green Racing Project team. Lauren and Grace, Loco as she sometimes goes by, they both went to Wisconsin together. Actually, Grace was a lightweight for 2 years, and then joined the open weight team and has competed as an open weight. They overlapped, Lauren and Grace overlapped for 2 years, but did not get to compete in their senior season due to COVID. And so they joke that they're making up for lost time here, and they are making up some good team speed at this moment.
So save it and use it together.
Right? Yeah, they were just packing it in the bag.
I can push more. I can push more. Here we go. So here they are, extending their lead from the early. They got out to an early lead, extending their lead in the middle portion of the race. Quad speed that you're looking at. These are not quite as fast as 8s, but we're looking at low to mid 6s in terms of speed here overall. But they are able to travel almost as fast as an 8. An 8 in each class is going to be the fastest boat on the water. It's the biggest boat. It also, because it has a coxswain and has 8 oars too, that makes it slower than it might otherwise be if it were to be a sculling boat without a coxswain. Quads, no coxswain, so they are steering this very fast boat with their foot.
Yep.
Right? And so you imagine pushing yourself as hard as you possibly can. The black spots start to close in, so your peripheral vision goes away, your ears are ringing, you sometimes have blurred vision because all of the blood is going to your biggest muscles and to your cardiovascular system to function just so you can go fast. You are that honed and driven internally to push yourself to that point, and yet you still have to figure out how to stare very far down a tunnel and keep for yourself and 3 other people going perfectly straight in the lane.
The steering point, but also the communication point. A big
Yes.
part of the quad is that the roles and responsibilities of a coxswains for that 8 are delegated among the athletes in this quad. So we do have somebody steering, likely Lauren O'Connor is my guess, who knows. But then the role of communicating the race plan and steering is probably up to the bow woman or the 2 seat. In this case, Grace Joyce, bow woman of the crew we're seeing on screen, or Emily Delleman out of Stanford, racing for Green Racing Project. Teal, actually, what is interesting about her, she's the woman in 3 seat. She competed in the women's single and the speed order and has actually got a depth of experience on sweep. She only recently transferred over to sculling, but the other 3 women have a depth of experience in sculling. Lauren, her first senior team was the women's quad last year. Grace she's been competing in the Pan Am group, 4th in the women's single, gold in the quad for that Pan Am Games, and was able to place 9th in the quad in 2022.
So extending that lead, getting in, they are well into the last 500. You're going to see those red buoys soon. We'll see them rev it up because, again, racing the clock, no matter where you are, whether you're being pushed or not, you've got to find the best 4 quarters of racing that you can, because it's also another practice. Go out and do the best that you can. Go out and do what you do best, and that is race. Go race, find a new gear, and if you can find a new gear internally here without 5 other boats pushing on you bow ball to bow ball, then imagine the gears that you can find when they are pushing on you bow ball to bow ball. This is fantastic practice to set them up for the final Olympic and Paralympic qualification regatta. But again, you can never be far enough ahead. You got to wait for that buzzer. You got to wait till you know that you are 2 strokes past the finish line at a minimum to make sure that you know what's happening. And Grace?
We're coming down into the last 150 meters here of this women's quad trials, and it is that Sarasota composite still in front. I crossed paths with Greg Stone, who had been spending a couple of weeks here with this crew, trying to measure their relative speed against the light men's double that raced earlier. So they are racing the clock here to try to see where they stack up relative to their other teammates who have already punched their tickets to the final qualification regatta for the USA. And here they are. They know they are going to cross the line first. And the bell tolls. So congratulations to that training center, Sarasota composite boat of Lauren O'Connor, Teal Cohen, Emily Delleman, and Grace Joyce, who will be representing Team USA at the final qualification regatta in Lucerne, aiming to take a top 2 spot on the way towards the Paris Olympic Games. Congratulations to that crew. Good race on the part of the other Orion composite. Over to the right-hand side, definitely push them there to achieve that time. And the Orion composite on the near side of the screen. Great race for all. But it is the training center composite boat of Lauren O'Connor, Teal, Emily, and Grace Joyce, who will be going to Lucerne on that next step of this Olympic journey.
Of racing with the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Team Trials rowing. But my partner, Grace Latz, I'm Lindsay Shoup. Grace Latz is running downstairs. We've been going up and down this tower all morning long to bring you interviews with the athletes. This is a beautiful drone shot of this race course, this Olympic caliber race course, Olympic and Paralympic caliber race course for these athletes to get practice for the next steps in their process. Some spots on the Olympic team were decided this morning, some spots for athletes that need to go to a final Olympic and Paralympic qualification regatta in Lucerne, Switzerland in May. We're there. The United States has qualified 8 boats for the Olympic Games and 2 boats for the Paralympic Games. We have a total of, let me count, 8 crews that will go to the final Olympic qualification regatta in search of spots to the Olympic or Paralympic Games. We have 2 more sets of interviews coming at you with the men's quad and the women's quad. So please keep your eye on the Jumbotron, keep your eye on NBCSports.com, Peacock, and the NBC Sports app, because sure, we watch the racing, but we want to know what's going on in the minds of the athletes as they come down the course and what they're thinking on the dock, knowing what they just did this morning at the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Team Trials rowing. Kicking it over to Grace on the dock with the men's quad.
And I'm Grace Latsdown here with the winner of the men's quad here at the Olympic and Paralympic Team Trials. Just a quick rundown. Give us your names.
Kevin Cardno.
Liam Galloway.
Will Eganzowski. Don Williams.
And remember those names because you guys are slated to do very, very well, I think, here at the final qualification regatta. That's your next step. You all placed, I believe, 9th, needed 7th last year, but you're in that kind of top 2 range. It's within striking distance. So what does it feel to be able to win this race and then go on to the next step?
Well, I think this was a really good step in the process. I'd like to just give a round of applause to all the other competitors in that race. They did a really great job, and it was a close race, but fortunately we were able to execute how we wanted to today, and I think that sets us up well for moving towards Lucerne.
So that next step will be the final qualification regatta in Lucerne. What kind of changes do you think you'll make between now and then?
I think for us going forward, it's all about fitness. I know we probably look pretty big and strong, but Dom had a lot of makeup put on to make him look stronger. But I think we're probably going to need to work on our fitness. Being able to handle slow conditions like this even better, because we are a little bit of an undersized crew. But we've hit every check mark placed in front of us so far. So, that's the next one.
Yeah. Well, congratulations to all of you going on in the men's quad to Lucerne. Congratulations.
There's a stillness in the night that is, still surrounding me, that I know in an hour will be punctured by 30 aggressive, enthusiastic, and just eager athletes. When you start in the dark and end in the light, I think it's a beautiful metaphor for what we're trying to do within this sport, as people growing, using rowing as the vehicle for growth.
Up and overhead the tour already, 1-2. I've been rowing for about 3 years now. We trailer every day back and forth from the school to the river. Being at practice, it clears your mind off of everything that's stressful. You get a sense of peacefulness. Ever since I've joined rowing, I felt more confident in myself and stronger.
My basketball career fell to the sidelines in college because of injury. When rowing found me, it opened up a whole new world for me. Being able to compete with myself in a way that makes my body feel good again has had a tremendous effect on my health and overall well-being.
I row because it's beautiful. The balance between the physical and the emotional is sublime. It takes strength of muscle, it takes strength of spirit, strength of intellect. It challenges your entire being.
I use what I have, my arms, my back, and my chest, and am able to redefine what I'm capable of, stroke after stroke. I row because I'm grateful for my ability. On the water, I don't feel confined by my disability. I'm free.
I took my first strokes approximately 61 years ago. I find, a close race side by side is just exhilarating.
During the race,
There's so much going on, keeping part of your attention to the things that coach taught you that you need to focus on, pushing the limits of your body to a place that it's maybe never even gone before, and trusting that you have more and you can push for more, and it's all worth it because you're so committed to this goal, to the win, to the gold medal and the podium moment, that any amount of suffering and fatigue seems completely irrelevant.
You know, you don't stop rowing because you get old. You get old because you stop rowing.
We are with you live still here on NBCSports.com, bringing you the closeout of the morning with the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Team Trials rowing. We have not let you go yet here from Sarasota, Florida at Nathan Benderson Park, because we are going to take a few moments to have a conversation. Grace Latz is down on the dock waiting for the arrival live to get the first words from the winners of the women's quad final. We had this morning that we had 10 races go down the race course this morning, and the women's quad was the last race of the day for this Olympic and Paralympic team qualification, team trial. 3 of the boats that came down the course of the 10 races punched tickets to Paris this morning. They, pending USOPC approval, know that they are on the Olympic team. That was the women's single, the women's pair, and the men's pair. We had interviews with those athletes already. Very wonderful and exciting to get to talk to them as well. Those are 3 boats that were qualified and then also had to be decided through this trials that we're bringing to you live at Nathan Benderson Park. There are 6 other events that were also qualified by the United States because of their performance at the 2023, that's last year's World Championships. Those are the women's double, light women's double, women's straight 4, women's 8, and men's straight 4. Because of the performance of those crews at last year's World Championships, they also qualified for the United States to have the opportunity to compete at this year's Olympic Games to be held in Paris, France. Those boats, though, are camp-selected crews, which means that they performed at a winter speed order and among other events throughout the year that earned them an invitation to have the national team coach's eyes put on them to then go through a series of trials at a camp, in a camp system where those boats will be selected. So there's a pool of athletes awaiting. Some of them already know which boats they're in. Some of them don't necessarily. And then pending USOPC approval of those lineups, that will happen later in the year. I believe it's June and July that the lineups for the Olympic class events, and then also the 2 already qualified Paralympic class events. That's the PR3 mixed double is a Paralympic qualified event, and the PR3 mixed 4 is also a Paralympic qualified event. Those are also camp selected, but those have been named. They were named in January. Now, that final interview I keep talking about behind this wall with Grace Latz on the dock is the winner of the women's quad.
And yep, I'm Grace Latz down here with the winners of the women's quad here at the United States Olympic and Paralympic Team Trials. Congratulations. This is fantastic. I want to hear your names so people know.
Grace Joyce, Emily Delleman, Teal Cohen, Lauren O'Connor.
And same as last event, remember those names because next steps will be the final qualification regatta. But what are your thoughts after doing that race, laying down that time? What comes to mind?
Just excitement, I think. We had a clean start. We're excited to check this off the steps and head to Lucerne. So,
yeah. Yeah, and that next step is the qualification regatta where you'll need to take top 2 in order to advance on to the Olympic Games. What are things that you're looking to improve upon from this race to your next one?
I feel like our big focuses are going to be cleaning up technical even more and just getting in 2-3 weeks of really solid training, building that fitness base. We have a lot more speed to gain, especially in that middle 1,000, so looking to just capitalize on everything that we have already and improve on what we don't.
Yeah, and some of you have rode together. Grace and Loco, I know, are in that combination, but it's a new combination overall. So it's interesting to see how much can you advance from here until Lucerne. But when did you know in the race that things were going well? What were you thinking at that point?
I mean, the first 10 strokes were really clean, and after the first 10, I was like, I think we got it. We just got to stay composed and keep it chill, keep it calm and clean, and we did that all the way through, even with the win. So. And
staying internal as well. I was talking to Greg Stone just about your training and focusing on this relative competitive standard time of things as a team. For all of Team USA, a lot of us have been training across different boat classes. How can you feel the team, the sense of team across all the events is coming along as you go into Lucerne, whether it's qualification regatta or the World Cup?
Yeah, I think it's really fun because most of us spend so much of the year training in singles that it's such a fun experience hopping into team boats and just feeding off each other's energy and confidence. And I feel like we do a really good job of getting each other excited and just really wanting to pull for one another. So I think that creates more speed at the end of the day.
Yeah, it's definitely elevating everybody going up. So what are you all looking forward to? Embracing this moment, what are you looking forward to?
I think we're really looking forward to heading back home and just getting in a really solid chunk of training together. We've been in selection kind of the past few, 6 weeks-ish, so we've only been rowing together for a couple weeks, and I think it's been pretty chaotic with all the selection we've been doing, so I think just getting to really refocus and work on the basics and build up from there.
Yeah, you've got a lot of time to keep going fast. So congratulations, winners of the women's quad here at the United States Olympic and Paralympic Team Trials.
And we are with you live, closing out this morning of racing, a little over 2.5 hours of racing that we brought you, 10 races in Paralympic and Olympic class events at the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Team Trials Rowing. This is the last day. This was a finals day. We are going to round things out here. So far, what this event meant was certain athletes were camp selected, certain athletes were trials selected. These were those trials. So of the 8 out of the 14 Olympic class events, so the U.S. qualified because of last year's performance at the 2023 World Championships, qualified 8 events. There are 14 total, so 6 more will vie for spots at the final Olympic and Paralympic qualification regatta later this year in about a month and a half. Of the 5 Paralympic events, the United States has qualified 2, with 2 more that will vie for spots at the FOPQR, the final Olympic and Paralympic qualification regatta. So for information on that, if you're interested, Google final Olympic and Paralympic qualification regatta. It's in Lucerne, Switzerland, May 19th to 21st. Google it so that you know how those 8 American crews will do and what their performance ends up being at that regatta. Once those 8 crews go there, if they come in top 1 or 2, depending on their event, that will say whether the United States qualifies that event for the Olympic Games. At the Paralympic level, the most events that any country has qualified, I believe, is 4. At the Olympic level, the most so far that any nation in the world has qualified is 11 of the 14 possible. The United States is almost tied for second with 2 other countries, but they are third. The United States is third in terms of most boats qualified so far. So again, Google the final Olympic and Paralympic qualification regatta to find out those results, and keep your eye on the screen because the Olympics will happen on NBC July 22nd. 7th to August 4th. That is the rowing portion. Rowing is a first-week event, so it will happen during the first week of the Olympic Games. The Paralympics, August 30th to September 1st. The Olympics will be brought to you by NBC Sports. Beautiful shot overhead of that. Actually is a new structure that's just been built to help support the athletes that train here. The national team trains here part of the year. They've spent a decent portion of this year actually training on these very waters, staying in the hotel where we were staying actually for this event.
Absolutely.
It's a beautiful spot to come and train. It's amazing to see the support for the program grow over time, to see the athletes drawn into it. There are more athletes drawn into it. There was more sculling happening on American soil at a younger age than what we've seen in years past. So more athletes coming to the sculling events instead of the sweep events. Athletes that scull as high schoolers and then go to college and sweep and then come back to both. Again, it's just more seats for you to potentially sit in as you age through the program. We have a breadth of ages involved, 18 or 19 at the Paralympic level. Sometimes that happens at the Olympic level, all the way up through people in their 30s on the Olympic and Paralympic sides as well. So this is a sport for people of many ages, many levels of ability. You know, just a beautiful place to be. You saw the Crew of Thousands video that we had there with just an exposure to the different types of rowing that there is, different places that people row and why they row.
Yeah, and something that it came to mind when talking to the women's quad, because of the conversation I heard on the dock with the men's quad, is that kind of sense of community that happens not just within the elite training group, within the entire support system of
you
rowing.
row.
You row. But also, you know, like I think sometimes people think of events like this. This is the Olympic and Paralympic trials. It's really high stakes. They're very competitive, don't get me wrong. But everybody is pulling together for each other, whether it's within your boat or you're pushing the boat ahead of you to try to get a faster time, because you all know that it connects. And the sense of community that we see at the average level of rowing is translating well up to the elite level of rowing. And it's one team, one dream.
Yeah. We used to say one team, one towel, but one team, one dream really is true. The two things that come to mind there is you talk about the sense of community. You know, when things get harder and harder. You know, people think that, the more focused, the more streamlined, the more this. And then what happens is the harder that something is, the harder that it becomes, the more you have to enjoy it. And having a community surrounding you, teammates and supporters of all kinds, that helps the hard be a little more palatable. This is, there's no two ways around it. That is hard. You just have to go, this is going to be hard. What helps it be a little bit easier is that you enjoy that entire process from day to day. How can we get a little better at this thing?
Yeah.
Right. And then the other piece of it, when you talk about the community of pushing each other, it's not, am I winning? Well, no. Am I beating a prior version of myself based on how hard I'm pushing myself right now?
Right.
When everyone can look inside and do that, the fact that they mentioned on the doc, I know they said to you when you were just talking to them, the women's quad, that they spend most of the year in singles. They're going through selection. It's now nice to know that they're in this lineup. So here we are rowing small boats to be good in big boats. And the same goes for the sweep side. You row in small boats to be good in big boats. So you have that chance to push each other on the water. And so the best way to make the whole team better is to do your absolute best, whether it's leading from behind or being the boat out in front. And we all have the opportunity to be both of those throughout our training.
Yeah, and it's competition with an end goal of growth, not dominance. So everyone out here is looking to just be a better version of themselves, better version of that lineup.
Speaking to my heart, I'm over here just savoring your words here. Yeah.
And just better for Team USA. I am really excited to see what pans out for this crew who's going to the final qualification regatta in Lucerne for both the Olympic and Paralympic events. We have a lot of boats who have a next step, but they're in striking distance of making it to Paris.
Yeah, and seeing some of the levity that is happening.
Yeah.
Just in the personalities. That speaks to what I was saying about finding joy. My entire Olympic experience was that way, where we flowed in the boat and out of the boat and pushed each other. And sure, we might laugh when you trip and fall in the woods, but we would also help each other up, and adding that levity and that joy to what it is really makes the whole experience better. So I too too am very excited for what is to come in May at the qualification regatta, as well as at the Olympic and Paralympic Games. I think we've run out of time. I know you and I could have lots of conversations about the beauty of sport beyond what happens on the water, but they're taking our mics away. That's just how it works, folks. Thank you to those of you who are out there still watching us. I'm Lindsay Shoup, sitting here with
Grace Latz,
and we have just concluded the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Team Trials rowing from Nathan Benderson Park in Sarasota, Florida. Double high five. Yes. Have a fantastic Sunday.